This is the regular meeting conducted as Committee of the Whole for the City of Southfield for Monday, October 29, 2012. Who's calling the roll? Ms.
Moss. Here. Mr. Lamb.
Well, we have our...
Everyone's here except Councilman Cassie.
All present except Councilman
Mr. Cassie.
Usually we wasters.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the introduction of Court Administrator and Deputy Court Administrator. Judge Moisey, if you would, please. Sure. Why not?
It's a little formal.
It's whatever.
Rather informal
Was
meeting.
it tried to?
I'll turn this way.
That's fine.
And I won't stand behind the podium because they tell short people not to stand behind podiums.
You're fine.
Or podia, whatever. Thank you for the opportunity. We have, as you know, last June 29th, we lost both our veteran court administrator and our deputy court administrator. But we promoted from within. Our new court administrator, Cynthia Arvant, you've met before because we appointed her our magistrate. Is that on? Oh, push the button. See, on mine they're blue, so I didn't realize the light was on. Our new court administrator is Cynthia Arvant. Why don't you guys come up with me while I'm talking about you? Cindy came to us 5 years ago? 6 years ago? Three and then some. I first knew her when she was a young attorney with the law firm of Mooney and Condino. You may recognize the name of that firm. And then she left them to go work at the Attorney General's office, where she had the opportunity to work with Judge Richards. So when we were looking for a research attorney, a part-time research attorney, he knew she was home with her kids, and she came into us part-time. When our magistrates, we got low on magistrates, we thought, well, Cindy does a great job as a research attorney. Let's see how she'll do as a magistrate. So we did her, appointed her as a magistrate, and you met her then when we brought her for your approval. And she served as a part-time magistrate, part-time research attorney. And when Donna announced her retirement last spring, we kind of talked about it and offered the job to Cindy. Cindy is a resident of Beverly Hills, so a resident of the district, obviously as magistrate. She continues as magistrate. She's a graduate of Michigan State University and its law school, which when she went there was the Detroit College of Law. And we're very pleased to have her. She doesn't have the many years that Donna has, but she has other skills and she's learning. And Donna, as you may know, was a very organized and detailed person. So any question she has, she can find in what Donna left for her. And Donna did come in this morning to bring us bagels in honor of Notre Dame's 7th straight victory. She said to me, can you imagine how many times I would have had to buy bagels? That's the tradition. Whoever Michigan wins, we buy bagels. So we were off the hook this week, traditionally. Our deputy court administrator has worked for the court almost as long as me. Renee Shalai joined the court as a co-op student from Southfield High School when she was 15. She stayed with us as a co-op student, graduated from Southfield Lathrop, continued to work for us while she got an undergraduate degree at University of Michigan in Dearborn. So she's now been with the court 20 years, and while working for us, she met the love of her life, Lieutenant Robert Shalai of the Southfield Police Department, and now they keep themselves busy between their 2 full-time jobs and 3 under 5. So, Judge Richards is here also. Judge Johnson, as you might guess, is out on the campaign trail. In case anybody doesn't know, Judge Johnson is running for Supreme Court on the nonpartisan ballot next week. And if you have any questions for me or for our staff, our new court administrator, not so new anymore, we got 4 months in, 4 months today, or our deputy, we'd be happy We did promote in the probation department, because Brian had supervised the probation department, so we promoted one of the probation officers to the supervisor. So she has less to do with probation than Brian. Brian had those credentials as a social worker and former probation officer. So.
Any questions, Council?
Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
One of the things that has been helpful to me on the council and as mayor is to get the annual report. Budget time is important that we understand if there are some challenges. I think it's important that if we're constantly updated, that if there is a discussion we need to have, it's not immediate and emergency, that we kind of know the trend. So I was hopeful that that would continue.
Absolutely.
And
I don't think we got the annual report done this year in the transition. I don't think that got done. You know, he's after 26 of them, it seems like. So, I guess I did prove it, yeah.
Anyone
A
else?
lot of statistics, if anybody ever has questions, you're more than happy to share the information we have about our court and type of cases, offenses, and
The state court administrator's office requires us to keep a lot of statistics. So we have a lot of reports and
I just wanted to highlight what we just went through with the landlord tenant situation with some of our housing. That was an example of how it's something that's happening in the city and we need to have the data. So just thank you for that because you were there responsible.
I mean, and I know we've talked about that every time I've come before council over the last 26 years, that especially in the last 10, 15 years, that is the biggest area of growth in our town.
I think I would like Sue to talk about our needs act.
Why would a bunch get there?
Please, Georgia. No.
We do have a new project that I noticed boxed up on the little table in the outer office, and I don't know if Cindy or Renee wants to talk about that. Well, I don't know who's spearheading it, whoever wants. Renee's going to lend it to the lawyer to.
Well, it was really a project that Donna Baudet has been looking into with Renee for several years about, we're carrying a lot of receivables. People sometimes are not paying judgments they owe the court, and it's not necessarily a situation of them not being able to, it's a situation of them not caring to do that. There's a lot of things that the court does to try and collect these judgments. We have a collect program, we're sending out mailings, we're sending out notices, and the new thing we just launched with a lot of work from Renee and two of our clerks who really took the ball and ran with it, is a tax garnishment project. So we have stacks and stacks of tax garnishments that are being issued to the state this week, tomorrow. They're going to the state. So we're attempting to garnish tax returns of anybody who owes a certain it's 1,247 tax garnishments of people that represents $317,000 in receivables. So we're hopeful that we can collect some of that money. Another way to bring in money that's owed and to try and track some of this down. We're hopeful, and we will report back what our results are with that.
Mr. McCollum.
That you're going to be current now, rather than an all set. So if people don't pay, you're going to punish them immediately?
Well, the tax garnishment, that's an annual type project.
Once a year?
And so we intend to see how we do this year, and expand upon it for next year.
Yeah, that's not been done before?
We have never done that before. This is our very first go around. We're learning a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
We're learning a lot about it. So hopefully it's another way to clear up some of the receivables we have.
Collection lawyers do that pretty routinely. So this time of year, we'll start getting boxes of tax garnishments for state, for state income tax returns for people who have judgments against them on the civil side. And this time, so way it was set up, 10 years ago, wasn't really sustainable financially. The state didn't fund it fully, and we found the way it was set up, we had limited number of people we could put into the program. And we had the equivalent of one full-time probation officer servicing those 25, 30 people, while we have hundreds of other people on probation. And unlike in circuit court, where if you go through drug court, you don't go to jail, here I was finding that I was sending people to jail on cases where I normally wouldn't have, because they had a bad breath test when they went in, or they forgot that they didn't do something. And so then, and the protocol was, first offense, you go 2 days jail. So it ended up adding up to more jail than we might have given them. It does seem to work, though. Unfortunately, one of our successful graduates, a lawyer, I found out in reading the bar journal that he picked up his felony drunk driving, and he is about to be sentenced on a third drunk driving. So it worked for him for a while, but and I found out that he was in court representing somebody drunk. So there hasn't been enough long-term study of how it works. For the people that really worked it, it worked. And it was unfortunate that we couldn't sustain it, but it really wasn't cost-effective. The Veterans Program, we haven't really looked at. We do have a special docket and a special way of handling domestic violence cases, because we found those to be a big chunk of our docket requiring special handling. And I know years ago, before Judge Richards and Cindy were involved, a long ago, probation officer and I went to a program at the state where we went for a couple days, and they gave us ideas, and we came back and worked on a plan for domestic violence court. And I spoke with my then assistant city attorney, and said, we don't really have enough cases. So this is probably close to 20 years ago. Since then, obviously, we have enough cases. We have one probation officer assigned to those cases. We have developed a program with human services at our location for counseling for those folks. We see them 2 months after their sentence to make sure they're on track. And so we're monitoring those more closely, using some of the skills that we were taught in the recovery court kind of training. So we are using that model on the domestic violence docket.
If you could just look into the veterans, because I don't know if we have the
I don't know that we have
take that
population.
Well, maybe we can coordinate with them. And just lastly, I just want to thank you for all of your years.
Thank you.
You've been a homegrown, amazing part of the legacy of this community, and just want to tell you that
Thank you.
as being a woman judge, and just all of the years that you have given to this community. Don't cry.
I mean, you know, it's a weird kind of exciting, nervous. You know, I come to this building almost every day for 26 and a half years, and so it's going to be weird. Though we were talking today, new judges school is pretty much right after the first of the year, and I'll probably be sitting as a visiting judge. So it probably won't be right away that I'm going to come here every day.
Judge Lawrence, when are you actually retiring?
My term ends December 31st.
December 31st?
Yeah. And I met with Lori and BL today on my pension papers.
Well, you will be missed. I mean, you're a fixture here. Don't cry.
You didn't hear that we cut out pensions?
Well, it isn't that big anyway, my city pension.
Oh, go to Katie.
Yeah.
So it's like breaking a family, you know?
I know. You know, I have lawyers who are coming up and saying, you were here when I started. I did my first trial in front of you.
Oh,
that kind of stuff. So
You threatened so many times and you didn't quit, and I said, don't quit, don't quit. And this was, what, the third time you finally should quit?
no, this one I really haven't.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, I couldn't until I wasn't vested in my city pension until a year ago.
Makes a difference. But
And I'm not as young as you think.
you contributed a lot, and we know that, and I think we certainly all appreciate what you've done and the interest you've shown in the city and helped
Don
out
and I
many
were
people.
talking last night. I've lived in the community next month 46 years.
Well,
Let me say this as a retiree to a future retiree. You think you're going to miss coming to work. But the very first day that it snows hard, people are going to work sideways, you're going to be glad to retire.
Well, but
enrich your life and have fun, and you deserve that.
Thank you.
And thank you for introducing these two great additions to our court system. I'm very, very pleased. Personally, I'm delighted to have it both. Very, very pleased.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Murphy. All right, the next item, thank you. Next item is one of an act on in 1697 on alternative financial services and loan costs.
So moved.
We're going to do a rule 10.
Rule 10. I'm moving rule 10.
Motion for rule 10, supported by Mr. Price, supported by Mr. Frazier. All in favor?
Aye. Then I'll move to enact ordinance 1597. Support.
Motion by Mr. Price, supported by Mr. Frazier to enact ordinance 1597. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried. Thank you. Now we have the library. Librarian, if you would.
While Ms. Meadwick's walking up, one of the things that is going to be impressive about this presentation is it's a way of preserving and even improving services at less cost, and it also has to do with being able to get the job done with less folks. So that's why we wanted council to see a nice presentation, and we might want to do this at a meeting on television for the public.
Do you want to light, Jim?
Oh, I can do that.
Just a little bit?
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to do this. I hope my voice holds out. I'm just getting over a cold, but I think I should. This is our current web page, and currently, what you see is you search using this box here. Okay. It just redid. But this item that we're going to talk about is called Encore Synergy, and instead of having to decide do you want to search under keyword, title, author, subject, or call number, it's an add-on, and they've given us a temporary demo here. You can actually go to the web page yourself at home and test this out if you like. You do one search, and it searches not only all of those categories, but it also searches articles, part of the web, and databases that we have in our library. Now, this leverages what we have for a very low cost, making our web page more of a virtual branch that is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days, usable to people from their home or business if they are card-carrying patrons of the library. Now I'm going to search green business. And we'll see that there are 52 results. Some of the things that are interesting about this is the idea that on the far side here, it'll tell you whether it's at the library right now or whether it's online. It'll tell you whether this is I can truncate my search by title, subject. I can say, well, I only want videos. So if I only wanted videos, I click here, and it only gives me the videos that we have. If I change my mind, I can go back. I can say I only want items in a certain language. I can say that I only want things that are family-owned business enterprises, electronic books, which would mean e-books that you can then download without ever having to come into the library. These are all things that we could not do in the past. It also tells you things like check the shelf. That means it's on the shelf. If I only wanted things that were 2011 or newer, I would click right here, and it would take away anything that's older. It also searches MEL, and for those of you who are not familiar with MEL, it's this box over to the side. MEL is the Michigan Electronic Library. This is where we get our interlibrary loans. So that if you saw that the title you wanted was not in that search, you could click on MEL and also find, according to this, there are 1,898 items on MEL that you could then ask for, and they would be delivered to our library, and you can pick them up at the drive-up window. One thing that's different here, too, is related searches at the bottom. I don't know why acting is considered a green business, but according to this, there's something that ties in. These are other terms. Oh, there you go, marijuana industry. That's a green business, I guess. But that tells you some other things that you could search for the same type of thing. Now, I'm going to switch demo version. It doesn't have everything. Grosse Pointe Public Library already owns this. This is their web page. And if I do the same search at their website, you will see, all right, come on now. Off to the side. Oh, crud. Of course it won't work for me. That'll teach me. There's supposed to be a thing called a tag cloud. And a tag cloud is an interesting, it should be a group of words that when we get ours set up, it would be a group of words over here. The size of the word will tell you how many links there are to it that are relevant. Now, one of the other great things about this is if I typed, or let's say I said GREAN business. In our current catalog, it would just tell you, sorry, there's nothing. In this one, it says, did you mean green business? So if you are a bad typist or a bad speller, you can still find things. And believe me, there are some of us who type so fast, or we think we're typing fast, and we can't keep up. But this is a way for us to kind of put our catalog on steroids and allow people to be able to find things and order them in a much entrepreneur. Let's just do it this way. Oh, did you mean entrepreneur? Yeah, well, let's see what we got there. It says that there are 185 results. One of the other things is that not only is it searching our catalog, it can search articles in the database. Now, this one, there we go. There are 36,169 articles that, like this one is full text. From home, if I'm doing a paper, I can actually print that or copy it to my computer so that the person is able to use the library without leaving home or work. This should help small business persons who cannot leave the office to come in be able to use the library more than they can now. So we find this to be a terrific thing, especially when we've had to reduce our hours. And the cost of this is $11,000 a year. The reduction in hours is saving us about $200,000 a year, so it's a great trade-off. And the way that we want to pay for this is we made some changes to our cataloging, so our bottom line stays the same. We're saving in another area, and we felt we could spend it here. Let's see. Any questions? Jeremy, yes.
Yeah, how's it all database? Is it all already on our site and we just kind of transfer it over to them, or does it take staff to database at all?
No, what it does is it actually is called a federated search, and it actually pulls them in from the we had to choose 5, and so we chose the ones that were most likely that are used the most often, and yes, it's nothing that our staff had to do other than choose those databases.
Great.
Apparently your story was very convincing.
It's my story and sticking to it. Well, thank you all, and I look forward to being able to show this again sometime.
I think it's very exciting.
Oh, we do too. Thank you.
This will come on the next agenda, regular meeting agenda.
So this is just a question for the public and
Correct.
regular meeting. That's right?
Yes.
Okay. Now we have authorization to apply for EPA grant funding for redevelopment purposes. Ms. Freeman, and we're going to want to go 10 for this one. And we're just finished. You can speak here or you can speak there, whichever one you prefer. It's up to you, but make sure the light's on. Okay.
Hello, Honorable Mayor, Council. The City of Southfield is seeking to participate in Elgin County's brownfield
money for, evaluating a resident?
I believe that we can use it any way that we see fit. So in the past, we did not use any of our other dollars for residential properties, but I don't see why we should be able to. I think we had discussed it in the past.
Okay, and you answered the other question that I was going to have, of the $600,000, did we have a set amount that was ours, or is it first come, first served?
So we would be allocated approximately $60,000, and then each community would have about a year and a half to spend their money, and any remaining dollars would go back to the county and be redistributed on an as-needed basis by, the other participating communities.
Are you saying that was the administrative fee or anything else?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
We need a rule 10 on it?
Yeah.
I'll move, so move.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Stiles, support by Mr. Frazier to enact Rule 10. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, then I'd move the authorization to participate in the Oakland County Broncos Consortium's application for 2013.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Stiles, support by Mr. Frazier, that we approve this and approve the application. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you so much, and I'll
Thank you.
keep you updated.
Thank you. Next, we have a presentation on the sign ordinance by our
Terry Comerford and Ed Gardella, the building department.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll pass up to you so you can follow along. They did a really good job putting this together on slides, and I think you'll should find it very informative. And hopefully we will meet your expectations where we have arrived.
You have everything you need? Are you everything you need?
Okay, our last sign presentation was at the end of April. The building and legal departments were instructed to return to council within 6 months with some ideas on regulating the electronic signs, including LED gas station price signs, and to seek input from businesses. So what we've done so far is we met with a cross-section of the business owners and received some of their feedback. We also revised the gas station product price sign language to include LED technology for the proposed ordinance. And we researched ordinance language, both local and national. And we met with electronic sign manufacturers. One of them was Datronic, they're leaders in the industry, and also liaison to some other government entities. So the business input we received was things, but those are the LED signs that are very popular right now. One is a number of people have been waiting to get on their locations. And also part two is the electronic signage or the EMCs. So I'm going to turn it over to Ed, and he's going to go through the rest of this.
Thank you, Karen. I think everybody knows me. I'm the sign inspector. First part, we wanted to break this down into two parts so that we could stop after the first part and discuss where we are so we don't make it too confusing to everybody. So the first one would be LED gasoline station signage, and that's specifically for the price of gas products or the fuel products is what we're talking about. There's a few ways that you can use that type of sign. It could be on a ground sign, it could be on a canopy sign. There's concerns when we talk about this as to where we're going to locate these signs. If they end up in corner clearance areas, you could have an issue with visibility. So that's something we're going to talk about. How we might limit their use. Issues with lighting, if they're too bright, or if actually sometimes during the day, if they're too dim, believe it or not. On a very sunny day, you won't be able to read the price of the gas. Obviously, we want to make sure that they're well maintained and that we have quality units out there. And we have right now some current non-conforming signage at these gasoline stations that we're going to have to discuss. Some of them have been granted by zoning board of appeal cases in the past, and some of them are just because the stations are very old and some of the signage out at the stations is very old. Okay, so these are the different types. We have what our ordinance calls a garden ground sign. Most people use the term a monument sign. There's several different ways you can address that. A ground support sign, which a lot of people call photo signs, that's what the industry calls. And canopy signs, which are anything mounted to the canopy over the gasoline pumps. So those are the three types of signs pretty much that you see at most gasoline stations. And these are examples of LED signs. This one happens to be actually at Lathrop at 12 and Southfield on the southwest corner. Both of these are in Farmington Hills and they're off of Orchard Lake. So one of the big issues really is a lot of our gas stations have smaller parcels. And I'm sure obviously the council knows this from bringing things to you from the planning commission that you've had to deal with as far as the size of these parcels. So they're generally smaller because of the age of them. They have multiple curb cuts at each one of these gas stations. There's quite a few examples, and I'll show you one. And what that creates is a very limited area to locate a ground sign on the parcel. Most of the site is a lot of concrete, and so there's very limited landscape areas where we can locate it, a ground sign that has a solid base that you can't see through, so that we don't get an obstruction for any vehicles or pedestrians that have to see through this sign to see either people walking on the sidewalk or cars coming down the street. So if the ideas are to go to this garden ground or the monument style signs, we're going to need to try and gain a little bit more landscape area to locate this sign, because one of the other things we could do at sites where there's no way we can achieve this, there's no way that we can get additional landscape area, is to provide an option to allow them to have the LED price sign on the canopy versus on a ground sign instead. So here's an example of what I'm talking about clearance, under clearance, and corner clearance issues. This is 12 and Evergreen Road. So as you can see, this is pretty much the area for the sign, for any ground sign at the parcel. And you have limited setback allowances. So what's happened is you try and create visibility by having an under clearance underneath the sign so that people can look under the sign good to create an additional landscape area here, which would eliminate this curb cut and give us an ability to move that lower ground sign back a little bit to aid in that visibility for traffic to look. If we brought it back here, they'd still be able to look at the same area they had previously underneath this sign to be able to look around. So we really needed some of these stations that have very small parcels and very limited areas for landscaping. We would need to find a way to be able to locate the lower signs a little bit farther back, which we would need to accept, get a little bit more landscape area to be able to locate the signs. Some of the limitations of use, this is from doing research from different ordinances. This is pretty common language that you see. You obviously want the change of the gas pricing to be instantaneous. You don't want any movement. You don't want it to do anything. You want the gas price to change when it's supposed to change and stay that way without any special effects. Right now, our ordinance only allows the advertisement of fuel prices. That's the way it's done right now. So we could maintain that language and still just use the LED technology to display fuel prices as they currently can now. Some of the lighting standards, we would, as I said earlier, we want to make sure that the brightness level of these LED units is controlled. And we've looked into some lighting sciences studies and some manufacturer studies on this brightness and have a pretty good idea how to handle the brightness issue. We want to make sure we control maximum brightness levels. We want to make sure we have a means to measure those brightness levels on the sign and be able to automatically adjust that brightness so that, for instance, as I was saying earlier, if you have a cloudy day, the sign may not need to be as bright. The LED units don't need to be as bright. If you get a sunny day, they maybe have to be turned up a little bit to offset the ambient light conditions. So we want to make sure that these units have the ability to change so that they're readable when they need to be readable, but they're not excessively bright at night. So that's what we would need to do with the controller. And then having a third party show us, basically, that they set the light levels for us that we've set in our ordinance as a standard, that they've been set properly, and that they protect them from someone in the gas station themselves, may not be the owner, maybe just somebody, manager for a week or something, may look out there and think, hey, you know what, I'm going to change it. I don't think that's bright enough. Or doing something to affect those brightness standards that we have. So we want to make sure that we can absolutely protect that, and I've talked to the industry representative, and there are means within the software to lock out those types of changes to only the owner of the gas station and not just the casual user of the software program. And we'd really like, I think it would be good for a little while to have annual inspections to make sure that these settings are correct. So this is what an old-style lighting control mechanism looks like. It's basically like a photocell or an input device to get that. Now this whole box is generally within the sign. You won't see it outside anymore. You'll see a device to measure outside, but you won't see this large box anymore. But I just wanted to let you know how it's done. There's generally a controller, a computerized controller that takes in the ambient light and then affects the brightness of the LED bulb itself to the correct level. And of course, maintenance and quality. We want to make sure that if these signs malfunction, we don't have, I've noticed actually driving back and forth on 8 Mile, there's a couple of Sunoco stations where one side, it kind of looks like it's 328, and the other side, it might look like it's 338, so you get kind of a mixed message as to what the real price is. So we want to make sure that the units that we have out there, that if they malfunction, that we turn them off so that we can get them fixed, or that they fix them very quickly. We also want to make sure that we have a non-clear cover over the LED bulbs themselves. It's a clear cover. You see that on most units. They have a clear cover to make sure that the bulbs don't get really dirty, and that you cut down on the glare a little bit from the LED bulb. So the last part really that we're talking about here is we currently have some non-conforming or larger product price signs or gasoline pricers out than what ordinance allows. When we change over, or when they are converted to the new LED prices, the visibility is greater, so we feel that we can drop back down to the standards or the sizes that are in the ordinance without having to have the larger signs now, because they should be, according to most of the industry people, they should be a little bit better readability for them. So, we have, Sue Ward legal department has been working with us on, and looked over some language for those LED gas station product price signs so that we can have that language in the ordinance.
Yeah, just just propose early language that could be reviewed. If council is satisfied with this direction, put it into a format. This basically is an amendment to the sign ordinance, and it encompasses most of the regulations that I think Ed has just talked about in terms of brightness, in terms of having this automatic default provision, non-glare panel, all of those things that we talked about have been incorporated in here, and obviously anything else that council feels would be helpful, we could incorporate it as well. So it's kind of an early draft, but at least it's something to start looking at.
So this is our plan tonight, is to get a consensus from you so that we could bring this back and get this part of the ordinance going, so the gas station owners could start gearing towards the product price signs in LED format, which they all seem to be very anxious to do. So,
That's what you're asking us
I'd like a consensus to either go ahead with it or.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah. Page 4 that Sue has passed out, it says, notwithstanding anything provided in this subsection, the product price sign may be mechanically or remotely operated utilizing LED lighting if all the following conditions are met. Such sign may only be located on a garden ground sign or open a common. Now you showed 3 different. Yes. So what we're not, if I might, Mr. Gaffney, what we're not proposing or what we're not recommending is, seems like the last time that we spoke about types of signs for LED signage, we weren't talking about tall pole signs. So what we're talking about is having them on those lower or garden ground signs and not on pole signs or on the canopy. So either on a sign with a base, a monument sign or garden ground sign, or on the canopy.
That ground sign would incorporate some landscaping and stuff that we.
But in talking about the one that they had to close a drive, give more landscaping so that the type of machine is outside. That is different than what you see at Evergreen and 12-mile road, which you can see underneath the sign. That sign cannot be used. Is that correct?
If I might, Mr. Gaffney, that sign could still be used as it's without the pricing on it. So there'd be 2 choices. There'd be an option to either go to the new garden ground sign, lower sign, and put the LEDs on it, or to take the gas pricing off of that sign and put it up on the canopy as electronic, as LEDs. So they would have a choice of either or. That's what we put in that language.
What is the reasoning that if a sign can be safely put on a corner so that people can see those passing through as well as cars sitting and stuff, why can't that also be used for LED? Well, I see those all over the place, and I just something comes up that is not acceptable for the city, we can amend it, as opposed to rewriting a whole new ordinance. If we can use by example those, West Bloomfield, Bloomfield Hills, everybody has that example of along Lake and Woodward Avenue, they have a gas station that has digital outside. And anything, it's a neat, pretty gas station for southeast.
I'd like to suggest something.
So I guess,
Because we got some confusion here. Can we go back to page 7? That might help. Because you actually have a different side.
but page
Page 7. And then you can get an idea of which one will be used and which one's the.
according to what I'm reading here, you can either have what's on the left side only. That's your choices, Jim. On page 7? You go to page 7?
This is it here.
Yeah. On the right-hand side, that would not be allowed.
Correct. According to
Only on the left-hand side, and I'm saying, I don't see anything wrong with the one on the right. That should be 3 options.
I agree. That's obviously council's decision. It's just in terms of what the research was done, many cities are trying to go away from the poll. And so there was thought that, this would give the opportunity to have the LED pricing, and maybe incentivize so that we're starting to get away from poll signs. But certainly, that's an option for council.
And I agree that these garden ground signs are really, that's my taste. That's what I really would like to see if we were starting new and everybody's under the same program. We're talking about conversion costs now. And conversion costs is almost prohibitive in the gas station business today because there's no money in gasoline. So if why do something that may be prohibitive because of cost, and when they still use the option of changing signs in inclement weather, like the digital signs. And I guess I'm torn between the two. If you, like I said, I prefer the ground sign monument, but I don't know, maybe you've heard some cost figures from some of the business people and side people. Of course, side people would love it if they had to take down all these signs and put brand new garden signs. That would be a whole new industry. I just don't want things to put on the books that are going to be prohibitive. And like, for example, that one Shell gas station you showed would have to close down. One of its operating driveways to expand its landscaping, to take out its pole sign, and it put outside. I mean, you know what the cost of that is. I mean, I told the administrator, I just talked to the Oakland County Road Commission, asked them on Marshall Road, why in the world didn't you make all the drives concrete instead of some concrete and some asphalt? The cost is almost the same. And when we talk about this, but the cost of concrete, to take it out for the landscaping, is also prohibitive. So, I mean, get some guys to tear up a driveway, they don't know what's underneath it.
Yeah, this was our suggestion, and
Well, I understand that.
we're open to the council's
I
comments.
understand. I guess I'm looking for what did the business people think about it, and what did the sign people think about it? In your weighing the kind of sign that you would recommend.
We actually didn't get into this much detail with them at the meeting we had because we were covering high-rise buildings and the other side.
And I understand.
What they do want is they want the electronic sign.
sign, and my pole sign is falling down, well, then I can't replace it, I've got to, but if I've got a pole sign now, I can convert it. And I think a lot of the stations want to convert. That was our impression.
Well, that one on Lasher and 11 Mile Road, right? That gas station was screwed down that shell, and that is a new sign.
It's a new number.
That's a new sign that it will not be able to convert. The shell gas is right across from Mobile. 11 Mile Road. That gas station on both sides.
Yes.
And the Mobile also has the older sign, but it's relatively new, and they redid it to groceries for 7-Eleven. They redid the whole sign too. So you're talking about people who have already just invested in this new signage, which would just change the top portion of the sign, leaving two poles, and I didn't even think this way to be but
We could probably work something through there.
Once again, I would suggest we grandfather people's pole signs, allow them to put their LED on their poles, but if they're going with a whole new sign, it's not a pole.
Could I, Mr. Secretary, or Councilman Secretary, could I clarify that a little bit?
So, from a sign aspect, from being a sign person, so at what point would you say, when they need to take the box completely off or the sign completely off the pole, that would be the trigger point? Or what would be the trigger point to remove the grandfathering to get them to go to the lower sign? That's a good question, and I don't pretend to have the answer. But I'm with Don. I don't want to put an undue expense on a business owner. And if they're still going to use their poles, let them have the LED on it. And maybe you tell us what you would recommend as far as when it's no longer grandfatherable, if there's such a word.
One is, through the chair, one option, Councilman Pfeiffer, that I think of is when they pull their tanks out, and they rip out all the concrete. That's an expensive endeavor, but it would be a good time to do it when they're redoing all the concrete out there. They could do the sign as well. Or if they were going to have a reason that they
someone comes in and their light is not in compliance, and I hope there's some software that can lock it in.
Yes.
Because I cannot see us policing that. I cannot see us going around saying your light is too bright. Because all they have to do is go to the computer, okay, we'll lower it, and then you leave out the door and put it right back up. So I just don't see how you could police the brightness of something. So unless there is software, and I would hope there is, that can do that. When you said you did not, when you had your meeting with the businesses, was this a all-inclusive group, or did you meet with the gas station owners separately?
We met with a gas station owner. We met with a couple of individuals that own high-rise buildings.
So you only met with one gas station owner?
Yes.
Why didn't you have more?
Well, what we were trying to do was, in the meeting, we had several issues that we were discussing, so we were trying to get a cross-section of people within that meeting. We didn't have individual meetings with just, for instance, people for gas station signage, people for high-rise signage, people for electronic signage. We tried to get comments from each of them in these areas. Otherwise, that would have probably been 5 or 6 different meetings of groups.
And I know hindsight is 2020, but there's actually association organizations that gas station owners belong to. And when you're trying to get a sense of the need of the group, even if you didn't want to talk to, bring all the gas station owners, you could talk to associations because they have this concern on, and there is an association of petroleum and food dealers that could really have given you a broader sense of what the needs are, and that's just a recommendation for the future.
one section. I mean, it would be that easy.
I think the question was how many pole signs do we
Yes,
have?
and I would say the majority, I would say, I can't think of one, trying to really press myself to think of one garden, ground sign or monument sign in the city. And if someone can help me.
No, the question is how many pole signs? The tall ones.
All of them. All of them.
That's what I'm
Okay,
talking
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I really think that we ought to really seriously consider the pole signs or the ground support signs as one of the options. And I'm sitting here trying to think of if a location has either a pole sign, well, a pole sign, which is a ground support sign, and we force them to have a garden ground sign, we may create a problem because of line of sight. So I think there's judgment. For instance, on Telegraph Road, where all the traffic is going one direction and then a median and other traffic going the other direction, the right turn on red is where I'm getting at. The right turn on red wouldn't be a problem because the garden ground sign wouldn't block the view of traffic that you're going to see. But on a small street, a smaller street where there is two-way traffic, going from a pole sign to a garden ground sign might cause sight conflict, especially on these areas where there's not that much, there's small lots, there's small parcels of property. So I think that all three of the options, and then some judgment, rather than saying you have to have a garden ground sign, because allow them to stay up with the ground support sign because it's safer. So that's the thing that I'm thinking of. So either that or they have to go up on the canopy. Take the pole sign out and put it on the canopy. But that way, it only can be seen from one direction. So that means that they have to have it on two different sides of the canopy. It's not as easy as it sounds, but I think the judgment should be included in how this ordinance is administered. And I think that the council, what I hear the council saying is, we don't want to put an undue burden on somebody to force them into a garden ground sign just because that's what the ordinance says. I think we have to be business friendly, but we also have to make sure that we're not creating an obstruction that would cause more accidents just because it's in the ordinance. That's it.
Mr. Picasso?
Yeah. And the single pole that is on a lot of the corners. Now, if they were to put LED in, where would they put the sign? Like they usually on both sides. Would they attach that as parasite signs to that? Or?
No, if I might, a pole sign, a single pole or double pole sign, can either be on the outside of the sign box or on the inside of the sign box. So a single pole sign, the pole goes up through the center of the sign box. Okay, so that Chrysler that you see now, the traditional one, is just a component of that sign. So what they do is they pull the top piece off, okay, they pull off the pricing unit, they push another one down, and they put the original sign back on top, slide it back over the pole. So they don't add anything to it, they just take the existing one off the pole and put the new LED Chrysler on it and put the top name, mobile, or whatever back on top of it.
So a single pole sign would be able to do an LED.
Yes.
size area of that the businesses are, you know, it'd be hard to, as far as I know, to have one standard for everybody. If we were starting at scratch, we'd say gas station has to have so much land, the building's got to be so much size, and you have to have a garden ground sign monument, and so much landscaping and so many entry stuff. And that would be the easy part. What we're dealing with is so many different types and sizes and shapes of these stores and businesses and gas stations that we're trying to put a ordinance together that covers everything. It's just difficult. I think by example, illustration, it should be, you know, just like the fence ordinance. You know, you can have this, this, and this, and this, and this is your choices. Depending on your size and clearance and whatever. And that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see someone have the options, you know, based upon what they have to deal with, how I do that suit, to come up with.
Well, if we wanted 3 types of signs to be an option, then we can leave it open to the owner. When he redoes the gas station, he pulls his canopy down, because none of that stuff lasts forever. Tanks come out every 10 years. So canopies, they start leaking them, and somebody else, another gas station, you know, change the stamps from Mobil to BP or whatever. So that can be an option when they want to, you know, redo the site.
I think that would be a fair way to work this out, by having illustrations and options.
I think once we can get a couple of garden ground signs in, some of the other gas station owners might think about, you know, how it looks, and makes their gas station a little bit more appealing. Maybe they'll
When you change your gas station, for example, from auto repair to a C-store, you should be able to look at that site and give a person, you know, an option on that, depending on parking. I guess parking would be a problem with the landscape, but I think that even at that, you should have an option of that. But I think that if a garden ground sign does in any way disrupt visibility from the people who are walking on the sidewalk or traffic, I would not force that on anybody. So I'm just that's really what I kind of been thinking of as we've been going through this problem, is that we're trying to deal with so many different kinds of sizes and shapes and poles and two stanchions, and it's just difficult thing to do. And that's, like I said, Terry, it's about a fence ordinance. It shows 10 different kinds of fences, and have the option of one of those fences.
The one thing we could do is if we went to a limitation that if you redo your sign, redo your site, it then becomes a garden ground. If for whatever reason, site clearance or whatever, doesn't really support a garden ground, they could always go to the ZBA for a waiver and be able to maybe get the fall sign through a waiver process. So that would then take into consideration the issues you're talking about, size, you know, curb cuts, availability of land, and those kind of issues that equitably the zoning board could review.
It would follow up on the hardship.
Right.
Mr. Sherrod, did you want to jump in?
Just a little. Seems like if you had page 7, which you have, and then a footnote for the signage, like at 12 Mile Southfield on the northeast corner, the big tall one. Okay, if you had some sort of way to handle those, you pretty much have it. Now, I guess the other answer, clarification. You studied dozens of gas stations in many communities.
Yeah.
So, as
again, in the modified form, if we have a consensus, from everybody that, obviously it seems like we have a consensus from everybody that, that we want some gas pricing LED language. It's just a matter of what format you'd like to see it back and what, conditions or lack of conditions that you'd like in that. But you'd like some other version other than what we have to incorporate what you've said tonight. But you'd like that brought back to you?
Yeah.
I think it's about the structure itself as opposed to the lighting. The structure becomes an issue because people have existing ones, and it'd be nice if everyone had the same, but it would create a hardship in many cases. And I think that's what I hear council saying, that the lighting, we want to give them the options of the LED, or in some cases they'll want something different, but the structure itself becomes an issue in a number of cases, I would presume, if I'm correct in that.
Yes, I have a legal question. If the zoning board of appeals grants the right for a station to have a certain kind of sign, does this ordinance now override that?
No, that's what the zoning board of appeals is there for.
So, but once that's given to them, and we amend our ordinance, does that person, say for instance, someone wants, and there is an advantage, especially on Telegraph Road and Southfield Road, to have the high sign.
The pole sign. Right.
The pole sign. There is an advantage.
Sure.
So say for instance, a company wants to do the pole sign, but if you don't grant them LDE, they're still going to put it up there because there is an advantage on those high traffic roads. Are we in this ordinance now prohibiting, or they can still go get a pole sign? Because I think
LED or not using LED.
they can just get it, if they can get LED.
Right, they still have the right, under the existing sign ordinance, to have what they have now.
Okay, so that's why I said, why don't we just, to me, if you just include the pole sign, the ordinance is fine.
And then maybe just talk about a grandfather, though, that we're,
Yes.
when new sites are built or new signs are erected, we don't want pole signs.
Right.
Or if they want to change a sign, if they want to make a major change.
problem here. That acceptable pole sign is acceptable.
No,
No,
that's
you
not
don't.
acceptable, Jim.
It's not.
Under the way the ordinance is structured, that would not be allowed.
See, you remember you said
What do you call the giant signs then?
right.
Pole sign, taller one.
That's what I mean by no. I don't think most people, when they think pole signs, don't think about this, they think about the huge one.
The one that's really on a pole, this is on a frame, kind of a.
But even under the proposed ordinance, this sign would not be eligible.
Under what?
Under the proposed language, you're
Yeah.
correct.
The language that we
Under
have
the
right
proposed
now.
language,
you're
Jim,
correct.
even that sign is not eligible to be LED, including the taller one. And to me, I just think if we add the pole signs as being eligible, and then put in the grandfather and say, all existing new signs must meet our new garden, ground, monument, or canopy, then I think that we have something we can work with. And all it is the exclusion of pole signs for me.
What if the new signs are on Telegraph Road, the new gas stations on Telegraph Road, those very busy areas,
I
they
agree
need
with
the
you, Joan. I don't
higher.
understand. He said it's not something we want anymore. I don't understand that. That's them.
No, I'm just thinking, in high traffic areas, we really need more visibility, so that's a different situation.
And, well, go ahead, finish.
No, your question, I'm fine.
Are we
Do we
understanding
have
correctly?
a height limit on pole signs?
25 feet.
Okay. I was just, going down the expressway, you see these things 10 miles up in the air. I was trying to see if we have a limit on this.
Yeah, there's been some.
There's one guy going.
Zoning board has-
100 feet, pretty soon they're
The
gonna.
zoning board
be
has
in
granted,
space.
right?
They're gonna be in space. Madam Chair, I'd like to go to a consensus that we types of signs that we would approve.
Would that be with the grandfather, or no, just a pole sign would be acceptable? Just so we know in terms of drafting.
Yeah, I'd say that maybe granted, with it,
Okay, so just add a pole sign in here as well?
yes.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot more, you have a lot more different areas to talk about signs, am I correct? There's a lot more to this, this is
But
just.
this would be a consensus on
On
this.
this one item, you wanna do that now? We can, I mean, if we can do that. Be easier to do it now than later. Yeah. So, what, you wanna make a motion?
Yes.
Consensus?
Okay. Well, I'm not sure I understand what he's asking, so let's,
Three options.
to permit the three options, is that what you're saying?
Including the single pole
Yeah.
sign into the, would be one of the other options on this, because they would be the ones that also are existing today that doesn't have to deal with.
Right.
So that means we're giving up the grandfather.
Well,
That's,
yeah, yes.
I kind of like phasing them out myself, but,
Using what else?
phasing out the pole sign, for, curb appeal reasons.
Okay, well, that doesn't bother me, that doesn't bother me.
I agree with Ken.
Okay.
so with the grandfather.
With the grandfather.
With the grandfather, and then we agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
You understand that, Ed? You have that?
Did you get that, Penny? Did you get this? Did you understand that?
Page 7 with the grandfather.
Okay.
Is that where you are? Page 7 with the grandfather.
Well, I want to make sure that goes through, and you might want to talk to each other after the meeting.
Ken?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sydney? Penny, you got that? No others, no no's?
No,
Oh, yeah.
right.
That takes care of the easy part. Phase two. We're what we want to do is, Ed's gonna run through, the electronic message center and show where we are with it, and then we'll talk about that.
Okay, so the second part of the presentation we wanted to do tonight, clearly separating the two issues, separating the issue of the gas station signage, which we just discussed, and now moving on to part two, which is similar technology, but can do much more. And that would be electronic message signs. That's a term that is used in the industry for a wide variety of these types of signs. It can go anywhere from a single color unit like this, all the way up to full color units, all the way up to the ability for full video, full motion video, and commercials to be played on. So this is just a general term that's used in the industry to encompass all those types of signs. So we're separating that from just an LED gas station sign. So really, as we've looked at it and talked to legal and gone back and forth quite a bit about this, we have two options. We have option one, which would be to create specific area to locate these electronic signs in overlay districts. The second option would be to permit them throughout the entire city, including residential districts. So those are the two options we're going to look at tonight. Option one, we'd be talking about maybe starting somewhere like 8 Mile Road and Telegraph Road as major thoroughfares for them. Not putting them at high accident intersections, so that we don't create a worse situation at those intersections. Tests in these areas, which are industrial and mostly industrial areas along Telegraph and 8 Mile Road. Not have them face directly any residential properties, and not be located on residential properties or in the residential district for any residential use. That's option one. So as we go through that, here's our map of 8 Mile from Inkster to Greenfield Road. You see quite a few properties along there that could be considered in this overlay zone. Additionally, Telegraph Road, I know there's some discussion of having more of a technology corridor up along Telegraph Road, and electronic residential districts. They are the most restrictive districts for signage. And the signs are smaller and there's fewer of them. And the reason for that is the negative impacts that you get from signage don't necessarily match residential districts. So that's one of the reasons our sign ordinance and uses in the zoning ordinance relate in this pyramid to a most restrictive or the most restrictions you place to keep residential districts the way they are, all the way down till you get to like an industrial or B3 or the sign ordinance goes up in the size, amount, and has less restrictions on those signs as the intensity of the district gets wider or broader. The sign allowance gets wider and broader, and it matches perfectly with the zoning ordinance that your uses are most restrictive in the residential district, is the type of uses you can have, and least restrictive when you get down to industrial and B3 and those types of uses. So the signage ordinance matches the zoning ordinance in the fact that the zoning ordinance types of uses in residential are more restrictive and less restrictive in an industrial zone. And therefore, the signage is most restrictive in the residential district and least restrictive as you get down to an industrial district.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you were doing your work on this, did you coordinate with the planner?
I did talk to the planner about
because we're just about ready, as soon as you sit down, we're going to start talking about mixed use.
Right.
Which means that we're going to have a combination of uses.
I guess I probably should clarify this a little bit. When I'm talking about residential districts, I'm not talking about mixed uses that allow residential and other types of uses. I'm talking about your traditional residential uses, which would be single-family districts, R1 through RE. So those types of districts are what I'm talking about when I'm talking about residential districts, and not mixed uses within another district that is more liberal. Let's say like RC, Regional Center, has mixed types of uses in there. You can have residential all the way through other types of high-rise uses. So I'm talking about, I guess it would be better for me to clarify, when I'm talking about residential districts, I'm talking about single-family residential districts.
Just so we're not working at cross purposes.
Right. So, other permitted uses in residential zoning include, obviously everybody knows, schools, private and public, churches, synagogues, mosques, cemeteries, parks, fraternal lodges, country clubs, community buildings, civic or social clubs, farms, vegetable, fruit, flower stands. So, I wanted to show you some examples as I went through the city, at different locations in the city to see where some of these uses were. This is a school right in amongst a neighborhood on Winchester. This home right here would be use this sign, as well as the exact same looking home, 2-story, is over here, and there's other homes right across that road. So this is an example where when you go to the point of having electronic signs in the residential district, these are the types of locations where they would be permitted. Here's another one. This is along Garner. There's actually 2 of these signs. This one for the elementary, and then there's one farther up the road for the high school where you would have 2 possible locations for electronic signs, for EMC signs, when they're permitted within residential neighborhoods. This is another one. While it's along a major thoroughfare, 9 miles, it still has some impact on homes over there and homes across the street on 9 miles. So here's another one. This is along 10 Mile Road. And so there's other types of uses other than what you would think of as traditional schools, where you can also think of Montessori and other types of uses that would be considered within the same special use allowance in the residential zone. So here's an example of a church. This is on Indian in a residential neighborhood. Directly across the street, in fact, this gentleman was cleaning up his leaves the day I came out there. So these signs in these neighborhoods would have a direct impact on residential properties, electronic signage within those areas. this sign with a home right there, with the back, probably bedrooms or whatever of that home right there that would be affected by the sign. So even though the sign's what we would think is on a major thoroughfare, it's on Evergreen Road, it will still impact residential neighborhoods like that. So that was an example. I wanted to give a whole bunch of different examples of locations of the sign. This is another church, Word of Faith along Ima. There's multiple entrances to the site and multiple walls like this throughout the site. But there's a little more distance between residential impacts across the street on this particular sign. So I wanted to show you a mixture of them. Then there's a whole separate issue of, so within a residential district even like this where the sign is facing the freeway, you also now have the issue of this freeway, the lodge right here, people on the lodge being able to view this sign as an electronic sign. So you have a whole other issue in front of you of whether or not this sign will create a distraction to a road like the lodge where people will be able to see it change. So that's another issue separate in and of itself. And actually on the other side of this property, you have another sign that could possibly be a changeable copy back there, which does face more homes on the other side of the street across there. Here's a park in residential zoning. Obviously, this would have to be approved by council at any stage if any changes were done with it. Here's a fraternal lodge, which is another one of the uses that we'd be talking about in the residential district. So, for instance, this would be, if you permitted them in residential districts, this would be another use that would be permitted in electronic sign. And you would have, obviously, a direct impact on this home right here. Another fraternal lodge, when the trees clear right here of the leaves, there's a home right there. Yeah. Country Club, Plum Hollow, has a little greater distance across the street. I'm just trying to show all the examples of some possible sites where, by permitting them in the residential zone, where these other sites would come into play also. Community building just right next to that church I showed you earlier, still on Indian Street. I wanted to show you a community building that would be permitted within that category of residential zoning special use. That type of use would be permitted if you allow electronic signs in the residential zone. That site would be permitted one according to whatever changes you would make. Vegetable, fruit, and flower stands along 9 Mile Road. One. There's the second. This one, uniquely enough, is along Evergreen Road also. So, what we kind of are seeking from council in this second portion is that we really need some help from council on some of these specific regulations. Whether it's option 1 or option 2, we would still need some information. I think what we got from the last meeting was council felt most comfortable with these electronic message centers on ground signs. But again, as we had the discussion on type of ground signs for the gas station signs, it's another question that we need more input on. The height of the sign, how tall do we want to make it? We had some discussion on tall pole signs versus non-tall pole signs. Setback of the sign, how far are we going to set it back from the road? How far are we going to keep them from intersections that have signals at them, so as to not confuse people when the change of the message occurs and the change of the signal occurs. Of course, whether we be talking about having these changing messages permitted at some of these same dangerous intersections. Again, the lighting restrictions, same issues that were brought up by the gas station signs, but they'll be more intense in that type of situation because on electronic message centers, you have the opportunity to make multiple colors instead of a single color. So you can have a whole background that's red, a whole background that's white, a whole background that's blue. So the LED units themselves can display multiple colors in this type of signage in electronic message center. So that's where the lighting restrictions become even more intense because you have the opportunity to have more intense lighting. Obviously, the maintenance requirements of the sign, and we'd be talking about getting some sort of landscaping additions when we're adding these forth between how much time the message is displayed, the length of time it's displayed. Goes all the way from the smallest amount that I've seen out there is 10 seconds. All the way to the largest I've seen is 20 minutes. No buy in Troy are currently at 1 minute. So the message changes every single minute, which would give you 60 changes in and out. A lot of communities are going to standards where they want to make sure that the size of the lettering on this EMC is of a sufficient height to be readable depending on the speed of the road. So if the road speed is faster, obviously the length of time that they have to view this message is shorter, so you want the lettering of a certain size so that it can be viewed. What's the distance between? Do we want to be able to see an EMC sign changing and one right behind it changing at a different rate? Because there'd be no way you could synchronize those two to change at the exact same time. So there would be some distance standards that we might come up with. Do we want them on smaller parcels? Do we want them on larger parcels? What would be some sort of an area where we feel that, or distances between the actual signs if the parcel is a very large size? We also could talk about trade-offs for that type of signage. For instance, something that came to mind when I was thinking about it was, so for instance, we have a site that might have a bunch of window signs or a bunch of signs that advertise what they have within the store. When you go to something like an electronic sign, now they have the ability to advertise those things which they had as window signs, only closer now where people can see them. So would it be a good trade-off to say, you know what, since you're going to be able to advertise all of these other items that you have within the store on this electronic message center, would it be a good trade-off to trade off those window signs within your window that advertise the exact same thing, milk $1.99, whatever it is, to put them on your electronic message center, because you would have that ability now. So, I know that the last time I was up here, we discussed this sign. And I just wanted everybody to know the scale and size of this sign. This portion of the sign, just right here, the electronic message center portion, is 3.5 feet by 10 feet, or 33 square foot. So that gives you kind of a scale or size of what we're talking about. The height is 9.5 feet total from the ground, and it's set back about 15 to 20 feet from the property line, which is about the back edge of the sidewalk. And that sign's fairly visible. Seems like it reads pretty well when you drive by it. So that kind of helps a little bit with the scale of it. But as we've seen with talking about gas stations, we could have so many dissimilar sites and so many unique sites that it might not be a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. So obviously, we're back to the conversation about garden ground signs, or maybe, a sign like this could have a brick base or any kind of other kind of base. So we'd be talking about that type. This is considered a ground support sign in our ordinance, or not. It kind of looks garden groundish, but it really isn't. And that kind of brings up the fact of, what kind of percentage would we talk about? Would we want a certain percentage of the sign to be a fixed message so that if, by chance, this message ever went out, there would still be identification to the site for somebody? So, I wanted to show you, when I talked earlier about some negative effects of having electronic signs near a signalized intersection. And these are very close to the city of Southfield. This one is on Grand River Road. So, this particular sign, this is a turnaround that comes right around here, and you stop at this light to turn the opposite way on Grand River. And when you're looking at this light changing, you're also looking at this electronic sign changing. So, if you're sitting there looking at it, and this changes to, let's say, a red background or something, when this is changing to green, I could see somebody having, some sort of an idea that maybe the light changed and maybe you're going to pull out. So that's something we want to avoid. This is in Royal Oak, on 11 Mile, coming into Main Street. This red light, this is actually fairly close to it. This sign is generally just red and white the whole time. So when this is green, this might be red or changing. So we kind of want to avoid some of these negative locations so that we don't interfere with lights and create any more of a hazard for traffic. So I just wanted to show that as an example. So our position really has brought to you in the past, but that's our position, is that the most cautious approach, I want to make sure I say, the most cautious approach is to prohibit all electronic message center signage. That's the most cautious approach. And the reason for that is that it avoids things like legal challenges, signs at less than desirable locations, less than ideal usage of the message, because remember, we are not going to be controlling the content of these signs. We will not be able to regulate what can be put up on these signs, on these electronic signs, as we don't do in a traditional sign. We don't regulate the content. So, you also have the issues with billboards and other non-conforming signage. And I will give you just one quick, in my conversations, I've talked to a couple people at Troy, Paul Evans, and some people that work on their electronic ordinance. And they're probably about the same stage we are in discussion, because they're looking at actually writing an ordinance to control some of these negative effects that we've just seen. And they're at a stopping point right now, because the billboard companies are challenging them on a different issue, on a billboard issue or a conversion of a billboard to an electronic billboard, and they want to get that issue straightened out through the courts before they move forward on the ordinance. But they're looking at creating an ordinance with more restrictions to stop some of the scrolling and negative effects. Obviously, again, it's going to be hard to control the quality of the display itself. We can put some guidelines on there, like we're doing with gas stations, but unfortunately, even though you put some of those guidelines, the quality of your display is going to be hard unless you try and do it on a case-by-case basis, where you make somebody run the display for you and show you whether it works well or doesn't work well. You know, so some of the things we can control. So, what we really are asking you in this portion is whether there's a consensus for us to move forward with option one, which is an overlay district or overlay districts, a couple of them, for electronic message centers, or whether you want option two, which is all throughout the city, including residential districts. So those are the two options that we're asking. And then, sorry, I actually let Gary finish this.
That's okay. You're doing a great job. So what we'd like to do is refer to a legislative committee, see if we can sit down and work with them and try to hammer some of these things out for some ordinance language. And recommendations from the committee to the council.
Do you want a consensus tonight on option one or option two? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. If I might, we would like both things. We would like consensus or an idea of which direction we should be going, either option one and option two. And we would also like council action to tell it to see whether this should be, or the council would like it referred to a committee, the legislation committee, so that we can work on those individual standards that 2 pages of standards I went through that are going to have to be, unfortunately, painstakingly gone through and looked at, which is
Done.
You know, as to, first I'd like to have, you'd like to send it to a committee, should be committee, and I think the site plan committee and the legislative committee should be in on that, so they can review those specific requirements for the proposals. The other thing is, in looking for consensus on the digital signage,
entire city, but include, but special consideration near residential districts.
I'm talking about, being so many feet from residential. I'm not against electronic messaging, I don't know which one throughout the entire city, including residential districts. I don't want to include residential districts necessarily.
And are you suggesting option one, if they want one or two?
Well, the overlay district may be a way of doing things so that you could, if you want somebody wants to litigate it, you would have your easiest chance to win, maybe by overlay. That'd be up to legal to tell me that.
Well, it also would be essentially then, try to see how it's working. You know, pick either telegraph or 8 Mile telegraph or some of the mile books.
I think when Google gave us the last 100 years ago, when we were doing that by districts, that seemed like that was something we were going to try out and see what happens before we amend it. And I don't know if that's the way to go or not, but I guess I'd have to meet some of my fellow constitutional mayor because I think electronic messaging is coming. It doesn't bother me. I think sometimes, when I see previous grandson on there,
well, they want to get a consensus, but I mean, if you want to talk to...
it brings you a nice message, or also football games coming, or season's ending. I mean, there's certain things that are, that you can, they move slow enough where you can read them going down to a mile. And I find those, kind of informative to me.
Jerry?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with option 2, but I think one thing that we could discuss that could alleviate some of your concerns is the time limit. At certain hours of the day, these signs have to go off, so that people aren't having to kind of, worry about at a certain time of day to shut their blinds or adjust. Is that an option? Is that always the idea? Am I underthinking this?
Well, if I might, so what you would be saying is to tell a similar use, depending on its zoning district, that you have to shut your sign off at a certain time just because you're in a residential neighborhood, or would you say shut them all off throughout the city at a certain time?
No, I would say I agree kind of with the amount of feet away from a residential property.
Well, what I'd be talking about is you're saying a distance of a certain feet from a residential property. What I'm saying is one of the options, option 2, says that you can have, there wouldn't be any footage distance between a residential property. They'd be in residential neighborhoods. Because we have those uses, as I showed pictures of, we have those uses within neighborhoods.
Yeah, so I guess I'm saying, it's an idea, I know it's going through committee first, that those within a residential district would have some sort of time limit to them.
It doesn't seem fair to other people, it doesn't. Why, once you start that, once you have a residential district, you're going to have all those residents in here complaining about it.
The examples that are shown, I think we need more data of how many there actually could or would be. I can't, I think the idea is that, it's a distraction. And I need to see even more data that, these really are true distractions, that we only want to limit them to certain areas. I'm not even certain that I buy into that argument, unless there's really raw data that says, electronic signs in certain areas cause more of an accident-prone circumstance. So, short of that, and I know this is going to the committee, so
this part is not going to committee. What's going to committee is the specific requirements in the ordinance language. They're asking us for, can we decide on a consensus on either option 1 or option 2?
Or can we take a round?
That's what I'm looking
yeah, I'm okay with option 2 or option 1, but the idea of a consensus is that we form a consensus. So I don't, if the rest of everybody is really kind of more so completely, I'm, in the box on my own on option 2, that's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to know what you thought. Ms. Lawrence, you had wanted to say something.
Mike, there really isn't that great a technology on being able to control the effect. They're multi-directional bulbs. They're like any other bulb, so the light is going to push out forward mostly, but it's almost impossible to control it to be just down, because then it wouldn't be visible to someone driving up to it if you tried to control the lighting down.
Right now, tell me the difference, and I'll use the churches. Almost every church has illuminated signs in front of their church.
Yes.
So it is lit now. If what they're asking for, and all the churches that I have talked to, and I've talked to more than one, is that they want the ability to use new technology to print out from a computer. Again, just like the gas stations that are having to physically go to their marker and stick new letters in the board to electronically change the message on their existing marker. And this to me is the rub, and why I would say that some of the churches are in residential areas. They're already illuminated. I know most of them are white. White with black writing. But they want the opportunity to use technology, as is same with the gas station. So I would, while I don't get both, I would like to put my suggestion on the table, because to eliminate the places of worship that have existing illuminated signs, to me, would be great. And I wanted to ask, we're saying electronic message centers. Why can't it be the same as the gas station, where there'll just be LED boards? So, like the churches, like the CVS, they're just type a message in, it's a fixed message. And it doesn't change unless they go in and have to change. Why do we have to have message centers?
Because, if I'm like, the way these operate, these particular units, you don't go in every time and type a message for it to change. You type a series of messages, as many as you want. Then you set the parameters on how often it's going to change, how quick it's going to change, how many times it's repeated. So it's not that you go in and set that.
Okay, I got that. But why do we have to say we have an ordinance to allow electronic message centers? Why don't we just let them have LED capabilities in their signs?
Because when you say that's why I wanted to separate the two types. A gas station sign is only capable of doing certain things, okay? That technology is only capable of advertising those particular units, generally one color, just the actual numbers from 0 to 9, okay? When you're talking about the types of units that you would be using, whether it be a church, a school, a business, or whatever it is, they would be capable of doing, not like a gas station, because that wouldn't be something that would work for them. They obviously don't want just a number or just a single fixed entity like that. They want to create a whole message. That's why they're termed electronic message centers, because you're creating a message that's going out to the public. So while LED is the technology that drives these electronic message centers, it's not, there is a division between the two.
So what the gas station is using, they're actually sitting at a computer and they have the ability to type in numbers.
Yes.
They have no ability to type in words.
They don't have the ability to, actually all they have in their software is the ability to change. That's the software that's provided changes the numbers and the pricing, and it's actually tied into these point of sale systems where they get the information from their jobber who's selling them the oil.
Got it. So is there a way that we can limit the will be discussed in the committee is limiting the colors and see if there's technology that can control, because, you know, the red glow versus, because the later sign, because school closed, that was illuminated. And we have early darkness in the fall, and so there were school events in the evening, and so it had to be illuminated, so when parents and people are coming, they would know where the school was. And no one in my community ever complained about that. It was there, it was illuminated. But now, if you're going to put green, red, and orange and whatever, now you get into different issues. I think that in residential areas we should include it, but after a certain time, it should turn off, or it should go to a different illumination or something. But my option is I don't see how we eliminate churches and places for worship, I should say, and I don't see how we eliminate the halls and other places that are on major roads but are considered in a residential area.
I hear what you're saying, and good comment, but what we have is a product that's designed to give flexibility almost to no end.
We restrict the existing signs now, and we have a lot of flexibility. We don't have a problem with that.
But the electronic message center is designed to expand the advertising.
But look at what we do with signs. We control what you put in our city, and we don't. I mean, it's a good thing.
Not content, but the sign itself.
But the sign itself. So we're controlling not the message. We're controlling the ability or the function of it that we want in our city. And I don't think we should shy away from that. No more than we shy away from if you want to come in and put 16 names of a company in a strip mall and represent every store, we say no. And we're comfortable with that. Because in our city, you only can put 4 or whatever it is within a certain time. And now they're squeezing them in there. You can't read. We talk about reading verbiage. Now you have the flexibility in the city to put little bitty signs on these strip malls because people are trying to get all the stores in there, and it's hard to read. So I mean, we're going to get into some issues and start talking about the height of signs. But I'm comfortable with the restrictions because I know we restrict our signs now. And what we do, and it's not a bad thing.
John, did you want to speak before we go?
Yeah, I think that, because it's such a new thing and it gives us some flexibility, I would think that overlay districts for electronic message centers would be the way to first start out. Seems like the most conservative kind of program to begin with, and then if you receive and work, then we can expand it. When you show the signs like Leonard School and those things that are in basically a residential area, all 4 corners, you right in the midst of it. I wouldn't even be opposed to electronic signs there if that could be I guess in some way legally described that kind of sign would have a time limit to it, so that it would be on 24 hours where you have against residential. I don't know how that, you follow what I'm saying? Yeah. But if we have, for example, you take Hope Church, for example, it's got a sign on the expressway. I mean, if that were digital messaging on that, it doesn't bother anybody, kind of 5-lane thoroughfare, with the service drives. Anything along the Northwestern, so that might be an overlay district.
a good kind of a testing area, to test them out on. And, for instance, the telegraph area, if you were to, as I said earlier, if you were talking about calling that a technology corridor in any sense, it would go really well with the term technology corridor. So it would be a great place to start there where you wouldn't have the negative effects of residential neighborhoods at all. So you could work on, after you fine-tune through committee, you fine-tune the standards or what you would like as standards. You could test those standards out and see if those standards actually worked in practice. You could test them out in those two zones. And then if you feel they're too restrictive, you could come back and say, you know what, I think they're too restrictive here, here, and here. And you could rework those. But at least it would give you an area to test out the theories that you come up with from the committee, that you come up with as far as size, scale, setback, lighting issues, how long they could be used. So it'd be like a little test. It'd be a test case.
Okay, one of the things that I think we need to guard against is ending up with a situation like 8 Mile Road between Lasser and Southfield Road, or Lasser and Greenfield. That's just absolutely garish. It looks like there's no control. Everybody did what they wanted to do. I don't have any problem as far as my consensus on option 1 or 2 is. I don't have any problem with option 2, and I agree that we need to study it more in either legislative and or the site plan committees. But one of the things that I don't think we can set on it. I think the world is passing us by, and I know driving down the expressway, the state of Michigan has signs on various bridges and along the highway that says what's going on, you know, click it or ticket, watch out for road down the road, and those signs change. I haven't noticed any real pileups when the sign changes. So I don't have any problem with option 2. One of the suggestions was that maybe we ought to include in the, and I know this is committee work, but I want to say it out loud because I only have 1 or 2 committees. I think we do need to have a time when they're shut off. When the business closes, there's no reason for the sign to be still on. And I would also like to see us somehow or another control those businesses that leave their large garden ground, not garden ground signs, but their pole signs on after they're closed, and they still, the sign is still lit. And I'm talking about up and down Telegraph Road and other, for instance, pardon me? I know that, but the place is closed.
Well, come back tomorrow.
Yeah, pardon?
Well, you heard that tell, I'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah, but I'm looking at, it would be nice to have dark skies.
That's the way they're gonna look at it, though.
Yeah, I suppose, but if I'm
You're restricting my business.
if I'm a visitor to Southfield, if I'm a visitor to Southfield and I'm driving down Telegraph Road and that sign is on, I will be 100 miles away by the time they open up again. So if I'm going to use it, you know, I know where it's at. So I would also like, if we can write the ordinance so that we shut down these message signs, that we ought to shut down their advertising, their location signs when they're closed. But that was more than you asked for. I'm saying option 2.
I would vote for yes on both.
Yes on both?
Well,
I think you can include 1 and 2.
I'm sorry?
I think you can include 1 and 2.
Okay. I'm fine with it. We need to move ahead.
Well, they
If
want
you drive up Telegraph, come to Southfield,
because I happened to be at a business place and the guy was looking at buying one, and the side guy was opening up his truck. He had a big van, and he showed me all these samples, and I said, you gotta be kidding me, you know, put those in the windows? I said, there's already, different kind of open and whatever in their lottery, all lit up in neon, and now you're gonna have this video going through, and that, you talking about distraction, that, somehow we've got to put some kind of limit, because they had a big windows, and what's the difference if it's outside or inside when you've got a big window facing the street?
So that's an interesting comment that you made, and that was one of the trade-offs that I'd be talking about. So let's say you have an electronic sign at a business along a major road. What if you said, you have your electronic sign out here, you don't get another electronic sign within the window, so that we talk about trade-offs of them, because some communities do limit the amount of window signage to a percentage or things like that, or count them against your allowances, your sign allowances otherwise. So that could be a possible trade-off that you would say is, you know what, we acknowledge you need the use of these electronic signs, but there's a good place to use them, and there's some negative aspects. So if you want to go with this new electronic census center on the outside, on your ground sign, the trade-off would be maybe you don't have any open or neon or window signs within the unit, within the store too.
Yeah, I think that should be brought up at this committee meeting too, because they're going business to business with these things, and a straight truck is like a display office. And they have, people sitting at tables sipping wine, and I put certain kind of so-and-so wine shop on there, and everything's moving, and they got inside the building, but you can see through the window, and they can change that. They can put anything they want on that video. And boy, it's like looking at your television set with a 30-foot screen. But anyway, the other thing I'd like to ask is it permitted today to light up our taller buildings in the city? Is that legal?
Yes, it is. It is not considered signage.
Pardon?
It is not considered signage.
So we could take all our high-rise buildings, say 5 stories and up, and have them light up at night?
Sure, we have that situation actually. I think doesn't the Holiday Inn Express at Evergreen, and I know some of the hotels are uplighting features of their building from down below. They're uplighting and washing the walls.
I was at Southfield, we were talking about it, and I said that, you come through Southfield at night, and outside of the lights in the offices, you really don't know that, and you don't really see the height of the building, and that we're a business community. If we're going to make this Southfield business address, I don't know why we don't light up these big buildings, and maybe have a shut off at a certain time, and people who come through say, like when I go down 75 to Atlanta, boy, you see that, it's striking, and I think we have to show off Southfield as being a business center by more than just talking about it.
Other states do.
And, wait one more thing. No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate you. May I ask a question?
Yes,
What do you consider the sign that the sign itself doesn't change, except it changes color? It's like marbles rolling around that are different color?
That's interesting, because that truly is an LED bulb within the sign itself that can display those different colors similar to in a message center. So that same LED bulb that might change from green to purple to yellow to whatever color, they can put inside a set of letters now that has a cover on it, and it can change colors from, I think you've seen it, obviously, you've seen it at a couple of sites, where will be tested to the highest level.
Yeah, so it looks like a chain or something.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
My suggestion is,
Madam
that
Chair.
the LED signs, a telegraph, and what I think it's.
Thank you, gentlemen, thank you.
If you go to Detroit, they've got a whole store.
We're gonna take 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I think it's very important, this has taken a year and a half to get to this point on these signs, electronic signs. I asked for them for a number of times before the action time started. We had this presented to us a couple of times, now we referred it to 2 committees, and then it's gonna have to come back to the council. It could literally take 2 more years for us to get through this, because next year's an election year, so you're gonna have all those kind of issues. We have the regular business that we need to take care of, and we need to take care of this issue. And I think as a council president, as a council, there needs to be some expectation of when things will get done. We know that we have limited staff now, we have other issues on the table, and you know, some people joke and say, if you want to kill something, assign it to committee. We've assigned it to 2 committees. And if we're really serious about what we keep saying we're behind times, I don't think it's just enough to say it's going to a committee. There should be some expectation from this body of when this will be coming forth, because it has to go, if I'm understanding you right, the legislative committee has to assign it and do their work, and then the building will have to gather that information, get it together. Then, after they do their work, it's got to go to the site plan. The site plan's got to do that, then the department's going to have to put that together before it comes back to full council. Now, in the midst of that, there's everything else we have to do. So is it an expectation of this body that from a year from now we'll have an electronic sign ordinance? What is the expectation?
I think personally,
Well, I'm talking to the chair.
no, I will tell you personally, I think we will have it done before mid-year. I would expect to see it done way before. Yes.
90 days.
That would be ready.
This one you can do immediately.
Yeah.
This one's done immediately.
And
The second one depends on calling the meeting. I mean, it can be done tomorrow, it can be done next week.
Don, we cancel meetings, we put things on, and I just say, I appreciate what the city administration.
Well, I don't want to do it this year.
We'll make sure it happens, 90 days.
90 days.
We have another presentation.
First of all, we got to understand that in a month, the committee.
Yeah, we're asking for committee to 90 days.
That's right, they have work to do.
Well, sign individuals.
They have put together a list, we've heard the presentation. Let's not belabor this now, we have another presentation.
But the council president can set committees.
Right.
Pick specific people, put it on this issue, and get in here, get the work done, and get it ready for approval.
They should meet in less than 2 weeks, I would think. Listen, we're taking a 5-minute break, and we're going to come back and listen to you.
Thank you.
We've got another workout for you, so 5 minutes, we'll be back.
I'm going to say that the good news is we don't have to worry about getting home to see the Tigers. The bad news is we don't have to get home to see the Tigers.
Monday Night Football.
Yeah, okay, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. So, what is an overlay district? An overlay district is a common tool for developing incentives on land within a defined geographic area. And what we're proposing for consideration is the Telegraph Road Technology Corridor, City Center District, and the Downtown Development Authority District. What are the common perceptions? Older cities have accumulated a set of policies and practices that prolong the approval process. These factors deter potential investors and prevent new investment that is essential to their continued viability. Challenges? Older cities struggle to attract new investment because of complexities associated with redevelopment. Higher development costs and greater risk in investing in older cities. It's the old greenfield versus brownfield development. numerous underutilized properties exist in convenient urban locations. These are some common developer comments. Uncharted territory equals uncharted results. Cities must help set a clear path for redevelopment. Cities must think out the process in advance. They need to do their homework and update tools and regulations where appropriate. And time is money. Density is the main smart growth tool, and first-ring suburbs have the infrastructure in place. That is one of our assets and our advantages for redevelopment. We need to pay attention to market needs and trends. Don't overregulate. And we need to integrate transparency, predictability, and efficiency in the process. And developers want to partner with the community. We're also facing some significant trends. There's a demographic shift. Currently, the traditional family of mother, father, and children is a minority, and it's only going to continue to grow. By 2030, 80% of households have been identified to be not the typical family unit with children. We have a first-ring suburb that was developed in the 50s and the 60s in the auto-dominated culture with large single-family homes on large lots or large luxury apartments. And with the household size shrinking, we have to be able to adapt to changing lifestyles. Young professionals, as I stated before, in the past, industry located where resources, either waterways or natural resources, were located, and people moved from the countryside into the industrial areas and lived in close proximity to where they worked. Today, many young professionals are choosing to live where they want to live first and then look for a job. Recently, I was at the state conference, heard a number of sessions on climate adaptation. Whether we could argue all night on what the causes are, but the trends are that we are changing significantly. Our flora and fauna are becoming more like middle southern states. We're going to have longer summers like we have with hotter weather, less rain events, but when we do get the rain events, they're going to be more severe, and the land's not going to be able to absorb that amount of water, and we're going to have flooding and erosion issues. Also, they predict winters are going to have more drastic snowfall. And this affects also everything from our infrastructure, the freeze-thaw cycle and how that affects pavement and concrete, on how sites accommodate water. So we as cities and municipalities are facing unprecedented changes in the history of modern era. Sustainability is important. The three tenets of sustainability are social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and economic sustainability. We've heard this before. Placemaking and creating a sense of place is very important. And recently, when I was up in Traverse City, we had a tour. Their downtown has a vacancy rate of less than 2%, but with no parking requirements associated with that development in the downtown. They expect the municipalities to provide parking or shared parking, or they allow parking within structures, but they do not allow any surface parking or have no minimum requirements for redevelopment. And yet they have less than 2% vacancy. It's just about thinking outside the box and adjusting to marketing trends, as I stated earlier. What could this look like? Now, this is just a vision concept, but this vision concept incorporates all of the mixed-use overlay district potential. Instead of requiring a 50-foot setback from the front yard, we would allow buildings to be built right up close to the road. Instead of limiting retail as an accessory use to a principal permitted use, we would allow a mixture of uses, retail, office, and residential, all in the same building. Instead of requiring X number of parking spaces for each individual development, we would allow shared parking and reduce parking and encourage walkability, public transit, and so forth. from the ground level. Well, this again is an image. This is looking on north on Central Park, Polk buildings in the background. But with the flexibility of an overlay district, we can push those buildings up close to the road. We can have diversity of uses all within. We can create a sense of place through walkability. We can encourage and promote low-impact design, rain gardens, bioswales, LED lighting. We can encourage biking and more pedestrian-friendly environments to deal with the changes that we know are coming. So tonight, I'm here to introduce the concept of overlay development district. Regulations would be broken down into a definition section, and then 4 main components of the regulations itself: a purpose, intent, and qualification section, uses permitted, uses prohibited, process for rezoning, and site plan approval and construction. The purpose of an overlay district is to encourage development and redevelopment, to provide flexibility, to foster creativity, and to preserve desirable features, including natural, historic, and architectural. It modifies traditional form of zoning with very strict guidelines with minimums and maximums. It permits a variety in design, the site configuration, setbacks, layout, parking, use, and even signage are all flexible within the overlay development district. Therefore, it encourages density and efficiency in use of land and ensures compatibility with surrounding land uses. In return for greater flexibility, the city can expect exceptional quality design, above average pedestrian amenities, creative design and layout of buildings, a focus on pedestrian space and circulation, significant architectural features, compatibility with surrounding land uses, and providing greater efficiency. The intent is to encourage an innovation of land uses and a variety of design, promoting low-impact design guidelines, permit flexibility in placement, setbacks, parking, lot area, signage, etc. Again, encourage pedestrian amenities, improve the public infrastructure through innovative means, promote more sustainable and healthy community, achieve coordinated site design and higher quality architecture, and to ultimately encourage redevelopment. Uses permitted and prohibited. We're proposing a trial of 3 overlay districts, as I stated before: the Telegraph Road, Tech Corridor, the City Center, and the DDA. I would imagine that we would establish a use table for each of these districts. Telegraph Road, Tech Corridor would have a more specific uses on research, design, and development, and the City Center and the DDA would probably be more similar to each other with mixed uses. In any of these overlay districts, underlying zoning and underlying uses would still be permitted under conventional zoning. So we're not getting rid of that. But where we want to encourage and foster higher use or certain types of uses, we would allow this flexibility tool. The rezoning procedure is the same as conventional zoning. An application and a preliminary review would be submitted through the planning department. We would take this through planning commission, study sessions, and a public hearing, and they would make a recommendation to the city council. And then the city council would have the final say on whether the rezoning is approved or denied, and then site plan approval would come afterwards. The difference here is that a master development agreement would be part and parcel to that overlay development district. Legal department, planning department, and the developer would hash out all of the parameters. I liken it similar to a consent judgment that you've gone through recently, where instead of saying strictly that a 50-foot yard setback is required in the regional center district, we might agree that we only want a 5-foot setback in the front yard. We want the buildings close to the road. Instead of saying you have to have 4 units of retail in order to make something work, we would allow mixed uses. We might have higher architectural standards. We might have flexibility of signs. And all of that would be spelled out in this master development agreement that would come to the council with the rezoning application. There's also a process for major minor modifications after the zoning is granted. And then we have stronger performance guarantees that we can build into the master development agreement. Construction would have to begin within 18 months after receiving final engineering approval, or 24 months if it's a multi-phase development. And hours of construction and other types of issues could be regulated as part of the master development agreement. At one time in our past, when the city was formed, I was staring at our city emblem the other night at council meeting, and it just kind of struck me that we have City of Progress. We've had a rich history of being on the forefront in this community with our high-rise development, our town center, where a lot of other cities were fighting to keep everything at the two-story level. We decided that we wanted to be futuristic, we wanted to be trendsetters, we wanted to be progressive. Tonight, the discussion with LED lighting and changeable message copy and so forth is on the cutting edge. And ultimately, as many of us talk, we're in a competition not only with cities around us, but with cities in other states and other regions and so forth. And this ultimately gives us just another tool in our development toolbox to entice and encourage redevelopment. At the end of the day, if a specific site does not make sense, the City Council has the ultimate final decision to say yes or no on each case. We would take each case on a case-by-case basis. But having this umbrella, having this extra development tool in our toolbox makes us redevelopment ready, encourages redevelopment, or encourages developers to give us a second look. So with that quick overview, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have. And ultimately, if you think this is worthwhile, I'm just looking for the council to direct me to take this back through the planning commission process and come back to you with finalized recommendations.
Terry, on page 2, you had finally ODD outside of the ordinance sort of attached map, and I didn't see a map in my packet. Is that?
The map was included last week. That is basically was a small version of this map.
Is that what you're referring to in this
yes.
page 2?
Yes.
So you just didn't attach it to this document?
It was, I'm sorry, it was attached last week, and maybe it didn't make it through the second.
I get it, I got it home there.
Okay.
Right, and on page 3, 7 acres, is that 1 acres or greater? 1 acre or greater? Which is the first,
the intent for the Southfield and the DDA is one acre
1 acre
and greater.
Okay.
And then in the Telegraph Road Technology Corridor, it would have to be 2 acres or greater to qualify.
And ODD site must abut and have direct access to a major thoroughfare. Is that necessarily so? It could be in a place where you do not have major thoroughfare.
We could decide to do that. It's just the intent is.
The city center, what would you consider that a major thoroughfare?
Evergreen Road, Northwestern Highway, Civic Center could possibly. What it would.
Major, I always look at
meaning
multitude of traffic.
Non-local roads like residential streets, and we could define capacity based on number of cars per day or something.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean by major.
Yeah, that should be defined as major could be, defined in many different ways. What's the next? Page 4, G. When you say council has the approval at what stage?
At the end of the rezoning amendment, just like a similar, if a zoning amendment came to council, you would have a public hearing and you would have the final say. But agreeing to a master development agreement that, when the process comes back through site plan, they have to comply with all of the parameters that you have set forth.
Would it be like contract zoning?
It's similar, but it's more flexible than contract zoning. But the process and the concept is the same, but the difference is, in contract zoning, a developer proposes a set of conditions, and the council and the city can either accept or deny with a little wiggle room. This allows for greater negotiation and flexibility. We might trade off setback for higher architectural design, or we might trade off other things. And this gives us, the staff, flexibility to develop an agreement with some trade-offs before it even comes to council.
I don't mind it coming to the council in final form, but I mean, I really believe that may be a problem, that unless you're part of the plan as it progresses through, gets to the final, there's going to be so much conversation and changes that the project is going to be so criticized or affirmed either way that it's going to be stalled. Somehow this process doesn't need approvals, but it needs some way of being aware of what is being promoted by the city, what changes, what trade-offs are going to be there, so that when it gets to the final stage, then the council is all on board. And I understand what you're saying, and the intent would be similar to site plan review committee, that there would be a committee input from the council, there could be a study session from the council before it actually gets to the council. I mean, that's part of the process that I envision. Okay. I think this is a great thing. I think that we should get this rolling. The only other change that I would like to see is throughout the proposed overlay is just that Southfield or Telegraph Road Technology Corridor, it doesn't mean anything to me, because Telegraph's a long road. This is Southfield, and it should be Southfield Technology Corridor. Okay, and we can do that. What I was trying to do was match up the master plan's definition of Telegraph Road from 8 Mile to 696. But I just don't want it to go beyond this point and it take on a new life onto its own as a telegraph corridor. Sure. You know, just like Automation Alley, you know, this is, you know, and a smart zone city. You know, whatever it says on their entranceway, well, all of a sudden, Automation Alley has the, you know, the name more prominently than Southfield being a smart city. And we're going to have to pound our chest at some time in this game to let people know that we are a city, and we're not, we may be affiliated with Automation Alley, but we're a little better than they are. I hear you. We can easily come up with a nomenclature, Southfield Tech Corridor, that matches what the boundary area in the master plan calls for as telegraph technology. Yeah, this is long in coming. This is great.
Are you finished?
Yep.
Mr. Long.
Yeah, I just have a few questions. I think this is exactly what we need, but I need a little bit more detail on bringing it beyond if you build it, they will come. How does this actually actively encourage and promote redevelopment in the city?
Well, in the beginning of the presentation, there was a lot of perceptions that this is feedback from development community. They also, when they look at a very rigid set of standards, their only recourse is to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and there's no guarantee that the ZBA is going to grant them all of their waivers. So what this does is allows them to be innovative and say, I don't have to limit myself to the strict confines of this underlying zoning district and meet all of these setback requirements. If I want to do something that's innovative believe that some of the parcels that have sat vacant, we'll start seeing more interest in new applications for redevelopment because we have this flexibility. Because when we, in the planning department, we many times meet with developers on a pre-application basis. They come in and say, what are your parameters? And it's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And then we say, well, this is the process. You'll have to go to the ZBA. We don't really recommend waivers. It's not in our, intrinsically, planners don't want to be waiving from what the council has set. This way, the council is fully a participant, and it's a partnership. And I think that's one of the keys that the developers want, is a partnership, and know that if we cross our T's and dot our I's the way you want it, we know at the end of the day, we have a very high likelihood of getting approved.
Okay. This is a pretty solid idea. I think it shows that we're really open for business. I think it's a tool for us to use. For now.
Yeah, I have three questions. In your preamble to this, you said that Traverse City has no parking restrictions. Can you explain that a little bit?
Basically, in their downtown, that is very vibrant. And so when I use the parameter of less than 2% vacancy, they're not being penalized or hamstrung because they have parking requirements that they have to meet. They want to encourage density and they want to encourage redevelopment. So what they've basically done is waived site-specific parking requirements on a parcel-by-parcel basis. Therefore, the developer knows that they can maximize their site for redevelopment. They're not going to build a development without knowing that there's parking available. So there's mechanisms where they can contribute into a municipal parking structure or joint parking. My point is that we always are afraid we're not going to have enough parking and therefore the business is going to fail. The opposite is actually true in vibrant places like Traverse City, is they don't have parking requirements, but they're very vibrant because they're flexible. So I guess that's my only point is this gives us some flexibility on waiving certain parking requirements, waiving setbacks, talking about being innovative with signage as well.
Last call.
Halloween. This is weird.
What is the traffic flow like?
Well, yeah, just like I've been there several times this year. You find a place to park in a municipal structure and you walk. For the most part, you walk to the retail district, you walk to the theater district. They've got a reinvigorated warehousing district, and you have a lot of innovation of mix of uses and development. But there are parking structures in strategic places within the district. They also have a very comprehensive wayfinding signage program, and I hope to bring that back to you in some future. I've got great examples. Grand Rapids went back to see Art Prize recently, Traverse City, Lansing, and these communities have the entire package, including wayfinding signage.
Okay.
And I can get you more statistics on that.
Well, it would just seem like if they didn't have any parking requirements, that developer A says, I can build my building and I expect a certain amount of traffic, automobile traffic, to come to my building without knowing what developer B has in his mind. And if they both think that they can put 50 cars
page 5?
Yes.
Recreational.
I'm sorry.
Uses and facilities.
I didn't know that. I don't know why that, when the lakes were going. In any event, items like that, we will add or subtract. And what I really hope to do is develop a table that has uses that would be permitted in the Southfield Tech Corridor, in the City Center, and the DDA. What I did as a starting point is I looked at all of the underlying zoning districts in these three areas, looked at their permitted, permissible uses, took out the ones that I thought were things we didn't want to encourage, and started with this as a starting point.
Okay. Because I'm still trying to figure out what's the best use for Northland.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm still trying to figure out what might be the best use for Northland.
Oh, yes.
And,
okay.
I mean, that's a sea of asphalt over there.
Right.
The other one, and I'm sure it makes sense, if I probably read it and slept on it, read it again, it might make sense to me, but on page 8.
Yes.
The bullet point right in the middle of the page starts up with preservation.
Okay. What that is specific to residential developments where you want to create a minimum green space. So it's saying in residential developments, if it was purely residential, 25% of the land would have to be set aside for green space. And in urban areas, 15% would have to be set aside as an urban park, plaza, or so forth. And it says that those are minimums. If the council feels that that's the minimum establishment, that they can't be waived unless 2/3 of the vote of the council agrees to them. Blocking out the light.
I thought Sandy was.
Is this talking about green space?
It's talking about green space for residential areas and urban space for like downtown areas. So what?
Okay, all right. I'm sure we'll go over more.
Yes, and I'll have some examples.
Okay.
Of what it looks like.
All right. I think that's all the questions I have.
I've got a few questions, Chair. Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
I'm going to start on page 8, backwards. Just that very paragraph that Mr. Frazier was talking about, and it says the 15% of urban open space, and somewhere else, I believe you call urban open space like maybe a large lobby or an indoor open space where people could gather.
Right.
Maybe like the lobby of our library or the town center where we have the atrium out there.
Right.
And where you say 15% of urban open space, I'm thinking urban open space ought to be defined as holding either a certain number of square feet or holding a certain number of people. Because it could be, maybe wrong about this, could be perceived as, a small lobby for a small office might hold their people, and maybe they've got 5 or 10 people, but I think you mean it as a gathering place.
If you look on the first page under definitions, I actually define what urban open space is.
I did see that, but I'm trying to hold some other places here.
So I'll just, urban open space is a public space that functions as a gathering space or part of a downtown, a special sub-area, or other area within the public realm that helps promote social interaction and create a sense of place. Possible examples may include such spaces as plazas, town squares, parks, marketplaces, public commons and malls, public greens, special areas within convention centers or grounds, sites within buildings such as lobbies, concourses, or public spaces within public and private
It's
buildings.
that last part that I'm talking about, the indoor places. you know, like a minimum size or something?
Well, 15%, so if you had 100 by 100, that's 10,000 square feet.
You mean 15% of the total
area.
area?
So we wanted to give the flexibility that if you wanted to build your building completely onto the edges of your property, then if you can't provide the outdoor space, you could still do it through a lobby or an atrium, just to promote that social
I understand what
interaction.
you're saying, but don't you think that there's just a suggestion that maybe, depending on the size of the building, you said 15%, but I think it should be...
We could further define ground floor area. I mean, these
Yeah.
are all good points, and this is just a starting point.
Because, I mean, the building might not want to have, you know, a lobby might be the kind of thing that people are coming and going to elevators, but you could have a lobby that you kind of lead these people into a narrower area for elevators. So you want to, I'm trying to pin them down, so if you really want to have them be able to have some public gathering from their building or outside, it needs to be specified that it be a minimum based on the building. And I don't know, 15%.
We can further clarify
But they could do it, you know, they could do it in a hallway or something, and that's one of them. Another one is where you say, lost my place, where you say give me a second here. On page 3, you say the land proposed to be included within the overlay district must consist of sufficient acreage as recommended by the planning commission to meet the objectives of this ordinance. Why the planning commission as opposed to the city council? I know there's reasons for it, but I'd like to hear what you're thinking was there.
Again, it's because it's in the part of the ordinance where the planning commission is reviewing it and making a recommendation to city council.
And you say later on that the council can override this?
Well, the council has the final authority, so this is part of, this is qualifying conditions, so this is early on in the process.
I understand, I'm just trying to understand
Yep.
what your intention is here. I'm not trying to nitpick what you're saying, I'm just trying to understand it. Something else I saw here that we have a lot size of less than what is specified as the city council finds. Okay, I think that's enough for now. Those are just some questions I had. So you're going to do what with this? Are you going to go over the planning commission?
If there's a consensus from the council that this is a good idea in concept, then I would like you to refer it back to the planning commission for further study, and we would fine-tune these points that you've brought up and come back to you within a month or two with a final recommendation for your consideration for adoption, similar to what we did with the fence ordinance and home occupations and so forth. This is such a big and unique tool. I wanted to come to council first and ask for a referral back to the commission before I went through the process of going through the commission and find out the council just doesn't have the appetite for it. I personally think it's a good thing to have. It only helps us, it can't hurt us, because on a case-by-case basis, if something doesn't make sense, you have the final say.
Well, for my own feeling about it is that it is something that we could definitely use for the technology corridor, and I think for the DDA and for the city center. I have another question on zoning, but I can ask that later. But I like this concept. I think it's something that's going to be useful for us, especially for Northland and especially for the DDA. Those are two sites that we really, and the telegraph area, we really need to pull something together that we can't do under current circumstances. So overall, I like the concept a lot. So you're going to take this, you're going to refer back to the planning commission?
If there's a consensus from the council, that's what I'm asking for tonight.
I have a sense that there is.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I say yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mayor?
before you shut that down, can you go back to that rendering you had of the city center area? That's the first time I've seen that one.
Central Park Boulevard.
And so I see the existing buildings, so we have enough land mass.
This is the Pomeroy site where there was those 3 office buildings.
Right.
Right there is about 10 acres of vacant parcels. And there's several other vacant parcels throughout. This right here is Central Park Boulevard.
Yeah.
And then I have that, the next slide kind of shows you looking north on Central Park Boulevard. Now, I hope to come back at a future point and actually get into the details of this schematic designs. We have several of them. This was just to show you the concept. But again, this was based originally when we had Bob Gibbs here in this very room. He said that we could, in theory, support 650,000 square feet of mixed-use retail. So we took that study and said, what would that look like if we had the flexibility with the zoning and the land use and the site assemblage? So this drawing is based on that flexibility and that market study. And it also incorporates the future redevelopment of Evergreen Road with the landscape medians and the roundabouts. It includes the recently repaved Civic Center Drive with the decorative crosswalks. So what we tried to do is we looked at everything that was on the books in the public realm, everything that possibly could be redeveloped in the private realm, and try to come up with a visualization. And actually, if you go on the Southfield City Center website, there's a 60-second fly-through, which is pretty cool, where you actually fly through this whole area and what it could be long-term.
What is fascinating to me, it looks like there's another road created off of it.
This is the an east-west connector from the Civic Plaza, which would eventually connect in, and I have a rendering of this in another bird's eye from the other end, which would further link Lawrence Tech and Eaton Corp. And really try to create a viable mixed-use pedestrian-friendly environment.
Because I've seen the design for, like, just right off of Evergreen, but that creation of that new street and path through is very exciting.
And this is humanizing it, putting it at eye level of what that perspective would look like looking north.
One thing I did want to say is that I'm familiar with the downtowns you're talking about, and the one thing they have that we don't have are municipal parking structures. And I have not heard anyone talk about us incorporating that in our future development. And I know Councilwoman Jordan isn't here. She always talk about us making money on municipal paid parking.
You know, Brenda, on that line, I wondered how much excess parking space, and it's walkable, at town center.
Oh, yeah.
Those garages.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
There is a lot.
But
I don't have a real handle on it because I don't know about vacancy in the office towers and so on. But I was thinking that you know, under park, so to speak, by our current standards, because you have close by parking at town center, of course that would take some kind of arrangement, but, you know, certainly potential.
Terry, could you go back to?
Yeah, I will. There was a suggestion that I pull up the.
I asked Gary.
I want to see the large overview.
I have all.
Parking decks at development, square foot, put together like a little box. I think you can have it for reference.
This one, yeah.
So here's if I could, just real briefly, these are kind of the four images. These are the two you've seen. This is looking east-west. This is looking west.
That street that you were talking
Yep,
about?
this is looking from, those flags are the existing Central Park Plaza. And then this is the aerial view from Lawrence Tech looking back east. This is the bridge, the Civic Center bridge.
Yeah.
But then, I'm going to just go quick here.
place for you to park, and then you can walk downtown Detroit. And Bob Gibbs said that you have to have a balance of no more than 50% surface parking to structure parking, and we actually have a glut. We have extra parking, so there might be an ability to work with existing structures and possibly look long range at a municipal structure. But this is just kind of wire, gives you a sense, and we're continuing to develop this. But this would be like a flight.
Is this the new road?
Yes, this is the new road.
Is that where the bulk of the retail is? I'd like to see where the bulk of the retail is proposed. Because I'm assuming you clustered it together.
Yeah, the bulk of the retail is north, south, and
What?
let me go back here. So the bulk of the retail is looking north, south on Central Park Boulevard on either side, and then as you get up to Civic Center Plaza, east-west. So that would be the bulk of the
Civic Center Plaza.
Yeah, we're currently having Eat to the Beat concerts with
That's City Center, that's City Center,
Civic Center Plaza. And then
isn't that City Center Boulevard?
it's Central Park Boulevard.
Central Park Boulevard.
And then if we were to create a
And
new
that's
road going east-west,
So are you north-south or east-west, which is the retail?
both north-south,
Oh, both?
and then east-west. So we go north-south from Central Park, from Civic Center up Central Park to where the plaza is, and then we would turn west. And that would be long-term future redevelopment.
The new road.
Right. But if we went back again, this just conceptually could be a hotel office complex with residential and
So Terry, you see the existing smaller buildings like Fridays and little strip at Potbelly is being redeveloped?
yes, and we've talked to developers that said they would be happy to redevelop, relocate those businesses if the market comes back.
Sure.
There's a synergy here, and those even
they could be within.
they could be within, but there could be an out parcel actually closer to the road that develops up on Evergreen Road. And they always saw that where that Potbelly's is a perfect example, was always a temporary development until the larger office. We fill those offices, again, we have 13,000 workers within this half-a-mile district. We have 2,400 people that come to this library every day. We estimate 200,000 to 300,000 people that come to the municipal complex. And we have all the residential in the area. And each one supports 9 additional square feet of retail and restaurant. So we have the numbers, we have the income, we have to have the tools as the next part of the implementation to create some flexibility here. We have the students, trying to build those connections with the students. And the city has a commitment to do the public infrastructure, and that's really important, is that there's a partnership. We've seen what we've been able to do with Civic Center Drive, and long-term, Evergreen Road is really going to be the spine for this redevelopment.
So, for instance, I noticed, and maybe these pictures were done before Martin Tech decided to redo the Civic Plaza building.
Right.
Because I noticed it's not here, but I was thinking about what Arizona State did
And the things like having the sports bar, pub and grub, the places where, as a father who goes to visit his daughter, and takes the roommates out, we want a decent place to go to eat. Those are the types of places. The types of places where, and I saw 3 women walking in our complex, and I stopped them and said, this was just last week, are you residents or office workers in the district? We've got a survey on walkability. They actually said, no, we're moms who have dropped their kids off at hockey practice, and we have 2 hours to kill, and we want to walk around. Those are the people we want to attract as well. They don't live here, they don't work here, but they're coming here,
And they'll spend money.
and they'll spend money here. And it's all of the above.
Sure.
I'll even go a step further with that. Not only when we were talking to Lawrence Tech students at the presidential inauguration, who said, I asked them, where did you go out on the weekend? Because I knew the answer wasn't here. They'll go to McBee's on Wednesday, but they'll go to Ferndale or Royal Oak, and they said, we want a walkable downtown Southfield. But I'll even go one step further. We were at the Yeshiva Betsy Huda dinner last night, and members of the Orthodox community, young guy, was saying to me, I moved to Ferndale. Now I go to the Woodward Synagogue, which is an Orthodox synagogue off of Woodward, because I wanted a downtown. He lived in Southfield. He works across the street. But I mean, there's young Israel's walkable from there. I mean, even the Orthodox community, or a diverse community wants this. This is something that young and old and everything in between. This is neat. This is something.
And I've said it before. Lawrence Tech has said to me, Terry, we don't have a problem attracting students to come to our campus because of our high academics. We have a problem keeping them here, and they transfer out in their sophomore and junior years because they don't have the full campus experience. And that is why they've added sports for the first time in 40 years, and they have 6 varsity sports that they offer scholarships. That's why they came to us to get the dormitory built. That's why they're partnering with private developers on doing student housing. And that's why they know that it's in both our best interest to have a viable city center district. And Shelley keeps reminding me, we have the 5 business schools within walking distance. Those are the people that come here at night and on weekends, and everything's closed when they have to run out and get a meal or get a snack or get a coffee or so forth. So it's all those people.
Thank you.
We have a couple of members of the public.
Yeah.
Thank you, Terry.
Is Terry head director?
Well, he's going to take it to the planning commission and then come back to us. Yes, you can close that up. I need the mic. Can you get that? We've got a couple of public people that are going to speak. Yeah, but just take out whatever you need. Okay. Ms. Pamela Gerald.
Can you hear me? Madam Mayor? My name is Pamela Gerald. I am an independent voice for Southfield. If you are listening to my voice via YouTube or audio reproduction, I can be reached at P.O. Box 155, Southfield, Michigan, 48037-0155, or by telephone at 248-352-9188. I am just a phone call away. I brought this Southfield Sun because I thought it was pretty interesting that the young lady that wrote the article quoted me as saying that the appointments of the police and fire chiefs were long overdue and should be considered a big achievement for the residents and city officials. Both Chief Hawkins and Chief Rowley are highly qualified and leaders of the department. I will add tonight that the city needed this historic moment. Mr. Charette, your decision to appoint in-house 2 chiefs that are respected by their peers was huge. Your decision has not only healed the city, but it has also boosted the department's morale. We can move on to other housekeeping issues, but we must stay focused on those other important decisions that need to be made. It's time for a change. Council, whenever you hear a siren, someone in public safety is risking their lives for you, me, our neighbors, the tax-evaded companies, or someone else in the city. Based on concerns expressed to me by other residents, we are still concerned about the following. Number 1, when will the police arbitration be settled? We are disturbed by the fact that the officers had to resort to this type of action to resolve their concerns. Number 2, when will the police officers get an acceptable contract? Our police have not had a contract since 2008. In addition, our police have not had a raise in 10 years. 10 years. All of you at this table have touted about our police officers and how good they are. Well, make their day. Do the right thing. Give our police officers the raise and the contract that they deserve. And it's really sad to know that the other unions have been beat down and have taken concessions. Haven't heard any concessions at the executive level, but that's another issue later to come. Number 3, Council, we are still down 30 police officers in this city. We have 2 cadets that have been police in waiting, and why haven't they been hired to become full-fledged police officers? We need to get in the grant writing business, and fast, and be consistent with it. Council, we have had grants in the past that have paid for up to 4 or 5 police officers. Number 4, we are still down 7 firefighters. I've said it before, and I'll say it again and again and again. A community is only as strong as its public safety. How are we treating our public safety personnel? And then number 5, after a person's term expires when they're serving on one of the boards and commissions, are they required to fill out a new application? And number 6, are they allowed to use the city officials as references, and can that be perceived as a conflict of interest? All I want to basically say is that we've done a good thing appointing the 2 chiefs, but we've got a lot of stuff to do. And we need to get more creative, and we need to collaborate a little bit more, stop being so critical of each other, stop being so disrespectful to the residents, and set the example that you want the residents to follow. If you want the residents to be professional at this podium, you need to treat us professional at this podium. If you don't want cell phones ringing, shut your cell phones off, and we'll do it. And I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
You don't mind, can I respond?
Absolutely.
There are a couple of, due respect to public input, there are a number of erroneous statements. First of all, the police in the last 10 years have had an excess of 18% raises over the 10-year period. So I don't know where this comes from, that the police have received no raises in 10 years. That's inaccurate. Number 2, the arbitration is in the control of outside judicial authorities. We do not push the judicial system. We have to go by the rules and regulations of the arbitration. We're under the old rules. There have been some new rules that have been formulated by the state legislature, when and if, and hopefully we won't have many arbitrations in the future. The newer rules will apply. It'll move the system along a little faster, but we're under the old rules right now in this particular arbitration. Number 3, any concessions that the unions took, the management took them normally earlier. 6 months earlier usually. The 2 cadets will be hired whenever the arbitration is concluded, hopefully, and we end up with 2-tier. We have to have an agreement on 2-tier. We are hiring no people under the old wage and benefit structure. We have 2-tier agreements, for example, with the firefighters union, and when hopefully we can get a 2-tier structure, we would love to consider hiring the 2 cadets. I'm not sure what number we're on now, but the percentages of the police and fire are down, are unfortunate, but we have to remember they are down from ideals. They're not down from the standards of comparables to other communities. If you compare us with other communities, you will find that we are very highly policed by our population, and even if you count our daytime population, our percentage of police officers relative to our population compares favorably with the other cities in this area. With regard to firefighters, our numbers compare very favorably with cities that are even larger than us. So by all standards, we're doing the best we can, and I would like to say this. Our taxable values are down 50%. Our police and fire are down nowhere near that percentage. The reason is because the internal departments took the hits, and the police and fire come last with any reductions. They don't come first. We're fighting to maintain the levels of police and fire because that's job one. That concludes my comments.
Our population is from 2000.
That is accurate. It's down about over 8%. Thank you.
Mr. Gerard Mullen. And you have you have 5 minutes, Mr. Mullen.
Madam President, my name is Gerard Mullen. Since 1958, I have lived here in this city, my city, the great city of Southfield, which is a damn good city. My address is Gerard Mullen, 2012@gmail.com. Tonight, I am not here to talk about those nice guys at Denzel, Council's favorite corporate criminal, and Southfield's best-known felon, and the city's #1 tax avoider. Instead, tonight I would like to respond to Councilman Cybers' comment to me at the council meeting of August 27th regarding my library presentation. Dr. Cyber raised the question that I may have been unaware that the library has its own separate funding. My answer, yes, Dr. Cyber, I know that. I also know that the library fund is just one of many dedicated tax accounting classifications used by the city to collect revenues. Currently, the library's dedicated millage is 2.8 mils, the legal limit under Michigan law for libraries. Also, I know that the library receives additional funding from donations, and that there is nothing that precludes this city from making a donation to the library. In fact, this city has an accounting classification that allows for such contingencies. It was just last year that council re-gifted a donation. In a word, council donated $150,000 to those official criminals who hang out at Denzel Drive, formerly known as Oak Hollow Street, a mile and a half northeast of Denzel Park, formerly known as Carpenter Lake.
Let me help out a little bit. I would like just a little. Number one, there's no legal limit on what libraries. I don't know where that comes from. If you can show me the source, I'd appreciate it. Number two, in terms of donations, I wouldn't call it a donation, but we do not do full cost accounting for the library. If we took every every minute of everyone's work on the other side, okay, and build the library, all right, that would be inappropriate, but it is, by cost accounting, you can do that. So there is a respectful relationship between this city administration, the elected officials, and everyone that works in these other buildings. We know how important the library is to this community, and so we try to work with them in a professional manner. We don't charge them every time you turn around for services. And so I think that to indicate that the general fund should make a donation is a bit of a push. It already happens in terms of we don't do full cost accounting. Where we could, we do appropriate. We charge for major services, facilities, insurances, etc. However, if the library went on its own and had to provide its own liability insurance, workers' compensation, property insurance, and the rest, it would cost probably 2 to 3 times what the general fund charges for those services. So that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before this council?
Did the third person not show up?
I was told that they did not show up.
Mr. Callis, just to make sure.
Mr. Callis is not here, right?
I was told they weren't here.
Mr. Callis is here because Terry Crow took care of his problems.
Were they notified the meeting was at the library?
With regard to Mr. Callis, to the chair, he was contacted by Mr. Crow. Mr. Crow addressed his concerns, and he is pleased with the contact that was made and the result thereof. With regard to the other individual, our meeting announcement is on the website, posted on the bulletin board, and so we're not sure why Mr. Jones is not here, so I'm not going to comment any further than that. Thank you.
All right, council, please. Did you have something else?
Yes. We wanted to see if there were, we had talked tentatively about a November 8th meeting, and there's a lot of stuff on November 8th and 9th, so we were I suggested to Jim that maybe you look for another night, and
You're going to do that, yeah.
I thought maybe, Ms. Seymour, that while we're here, we could suggest some dates so that we could save Jim some time. If anybody has a date that they'd like to suggest, I thought perhaps it might be helpful to do it now. The week after is, we have a council meeting on Monday, I believe. No, we don't, that's right. We don't, so.
Right, 12.
Yeah, so maybe,
Veterans Day.
maybe later that week, Thursday night or something.
Okay, what we'll do, we'll call council and we'll come up with
We don't want to, we need this discussion, but we don't want to delay it for our.
Right.
So I cleared 8 and 9, but we've got to have that meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not having enough meetings really to get the work done that we have to get done.
So, in the week, let's see, the 8th is a Thursday.
Right.
Okay, so.
So Monday's the 12th.
12th, so, and Monday, that's a holiday.
Right, yeah.
Yes, that's a word for a couple people. So.
Or Tuesday the 13th.
I don't have my calendar with me, so I don't.
What I'll do is, I'll have Diana do some call arounds, and we will find a date.